Good morning. It is. What is it today? August 22nd? That sounds about right. 2020. This is another Q Club Q Corner Q review with me. I am he who walks in shadows. We're going to be doing a lot of reviews today. DDQ and below, of course, because we like our DDQs. They are quite fantastic and they teach us all the things that we forgot we knew. So, let's start with the first game today. This is by Defazi, 21Q, and Knight, 14Q. Oh, you hate DDKs? What's wrong with DDKs? Yeah, once upon a time we was all DDKs, remember that? Yeah, every once in a while, even as SDKs, we'd be in the middle of a game, and there's lessons we should have remembered back when we were DDKs. Alright, what kind of fancy jazz do we have today? There is nothing wrong with always being DDK. Some of my best friends have always been DDK. Yeah, I think the biggest problem is trying to get from DDK to SDK. It's the amount of time that you actually have to put in sometimes. Like even when I became Don for the first time, I was studying 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was teaching, playing, reviewing, anything you could possibly imagine. I had a Go board in my room, one at the kitchen table, one in every room. Everywhere I went, that's what I did. I ran the Go Club in my town. We had 3 different meeting times, and I made sure I was at all of them so that we can, play as many games as possible. But that's it's a pretty heavy-duty life to be in if you're going to study that much. It really is a full-time job. And of course, I started the stream at the worst possible time because I started just as a 9x9 tournament started that I'm also in, so this is going to be interesting. Let's see how well I could do 2 things at once today. And good morning, Apollo and Jill. It's good to see yous here today. Hey, and another human. Greetings and salutations. So there was some contention in this game, although it's a 21Q and a 14Q. There's a nice 7-stone difference. The argument that happened during the game today was were either of these players really, well, I guess their specific rank. Like this corner enclosure, the way it's played out, white accused a black of actually not being, 21Q. And it does happen. This is the fun part about being DDK is every once in a while we learn something new, we try it out, we get this, uh, we get to shoot forward very early in the game, and then suddenly you fall back because you're still DDK. It's you get a brand new toy, but you just don't know how to use it yet. Oh yeah, I'm crazy that way. Don't worry, on my other screens, sometimes I'm playing DGS games and little golem games just so I can keep my train of thought going. Just don't tell my opponent on OGS that I'm doing 2 things at once. They might get upset that I'm not paying attention to them. No, it's they say learn Joseki and lose 2 stones, but it seems to be quite vital nowadays that you actually have to learn Joseki. The things that computers have come up with have been absolutely, well, quite literally game-changing. So once upon a time, this is one of those corner enclosures that wasn't often played like this. This is kind of brand new to me. There's a lot of them that just aren't played because the Like this one here, typically it was played over at S16 because S16 instead of R16 was actually considered safer and stronger. And you would actually end up with something like this. Sometimes it's also played at R12 instead of R11. And it does work out. It's not bad. I actually play this as well against some of my other opponents. SDK, DDK, it doesn't matter who I'm playing. I'll still play it because this is what I was used to. And this is this is where I know the most variations. But now with this once upon a time was considered a bit more vulgar. It was not desired to actually have contact with stones. Contact with stones was more of a middle game play. They do. But you see, it's amateur play that really keeps us going. It's a majority of us aren't professionals. Professionals make up a very small portion of the Go community. Yeah, S16 can be ignored. It's there's no absolute requirement to respond to it. Yeah, I could agree with that. The best thing is, it actually taught us all how to think differently. The game itself is still the same game that it was before. It's just now we have a completely different perspective. And you know, it's yeah, humans are not infallible. That's for sure. Like there's a lot of faults with humans, and AI just got to teach us things that we never really considered because as humans, you know, your teacher says don't play this, it's bad, so you don't play it because it's bad, and then the computer does it because it's good. Well, who do you listen to now? It's like we're going to listen to the computer. And we better listen to the computer because the computers are like, what, 20 done now compared to the ELO ratings? There's just no possible way that we'd ever catch up with them. Well, maybe there is, who knows? When it comes to humans, there's always going to be someone out there dedicated enough for whatever reason. They're going to be completely obsessed with the game, they're going to study computers to no end, and just maybe they'll be able to take it back, even if just for a game or two. So a Joseki like this is actually very exciting. That's because it does give you a lot of different variations right from the get-go. And as a DDK, I would recommend trying these out. You know, you might find a variation that's not going to work for you, but that's okay. It's this is what happens in every game we play. There's always going to be something that works for us and doesn't work for us. Alright, so the game was pretty steady until around here. This is a very interesting move. And it does have a place. And I would say the first thing that we're going to look at, though, is when you see something like this, you should cut. And this is going to be the best thing that any DDK can do. That's you want to use the divide and conquer method. The divide and conquer method has been tried and true. When you look at any of the AI games, this is what they do as well. So give it a shot and see what happens. And with this, one of the first things that your opponent gets to do is decide which stone they want to save. Because as they make one group stronger, the group on the top left here, then this other stone's just going to fall behind, and it's not going to be able to survive on its own, unfortunately. Hey, how about that? I won my first 9x9 game. So the next thing we're going to look at then is if you cut on one side, what happens if you go on the other side? Well, this might work out a little bit better, but it depends on, do you know what to do with influence? A string of stones is just that, a string of stones. So the comparison of the two is if you develop this way, black's going to get a bit more territory up top, And although white's getting a large chunk over here, it doesn't mean that black can't come in and just do a wild invasion. And I would call it wild because typically when you see something that's pretty big, you don't always want to jump into it right away. You just want to plan, but because you're far enough between either of these stones, you could successfully, most likely successfully live in here. But there's not a lot of places for black to run here because white actually has a pretty good protrusion over here. But that's okay. That's why we consider things like this as well. So if white wants to take the territory on this side, then black gets a little bit of extra support with these stones. So you wouldn't take this as you're getting all the center territory. No, you didn't just grab 100 points because you created a wall, but you did grab the ability to force your opponent into something. However, that being said, black would have fallen behind with this sequence here because this running on the fourth line with just a string of stones that you have to defend would be a way too slow and not the best way to go. Then we have something fancy like this. This just gives you a bit of extra support. It's threatening to try and save this stone, but you can have some fun with it because what do we have here? With the extra supports, you can actually force your opponent into a little bit of a dumpling shape. Unfortunately, this typically doesn't work out for black, but it could. It does look terrible, but there's a reason we like terribleness. I've used terribleness to develop walls before, and every once in a while, it does work. But that gets into fancy crosscuts. But this is actually quite common. There is a time and a place for something like this. This is not the time and the place. And this is actually one of my favorite things. I just had an opponent play this against me recently. And the reason I like it is because you get to force them into very bad cuttable shapes. And this is that kind of fancy thing that you look out for. And this will be the... Exactly, there is nothing wrong with 7th line influence. But what you want to do with your opponent is when they make moves like this, and this is actually going to pop up quite often, as soon as you see something you could poke into, the first thing you should do is poke into it. You really want something like that to happen, because now this has created 4 different cutting points for black. So things like this do come in handy. So there is a lot of power in a cut like this because there's not a lot of ways to save it. Typically, if you're going to try something like this, you have to pull back just enough. Maybe we could do this and this. And then this just becomes potentially 3 cutting points. It's a lot less severe. It's a lot less severe when you have something like that. And then white has a little bit of issues here if black comes in and lives. If. Yeah, D11 would be the proper way to go. Sometimes you could also just ignore it. So once the cut happens, you know what to expect. So just come in and then play towards this or this. What other kind of fun can we have with this? So this is a fair invasion. This is going to add a lot of opportunity for black here. White could approach it from either side. And hey, look at that! White eventually cut. So this is still good. This is still favorable for white right now. But when something like this happens, you want to choose, and I would say this side's already pretty well defended, so choose this side. This is the slightly weaker side. You would want this to be developed as much as possible. One of the issues we have is approaching on the 4th line here, though. The 4th line has actually come up quite a bit in some of the reviews lately. I know Jill has come up with a couple of very good games where this is a wonderful example. And the issue we have with the fourth line is you don't get a lot of ice space. It's the third line approach does create a lot of problems for Black, and it's not like Black can just take it and fix it right away because White's just gonna squeeze. So if you're going to invade, I recommend coming in on third line. The third line is the stronger line to come in on. And now, when this happens, although there's the potential cut in here, it's not quite viable yet. And Black can come in here for life or come up here to match. And this is a very nice light extension, very light play. Right now, L4 would be, of course, a good move, but there's still going to be a lot of problems here because these stones aren't quite alive, and there's a big corner to worry about. So when you come in on a third line, the third line does give you a little extra protection. It does give you a few extra options. And the fourth line, of course, it's brave, it's very territorial. I do enjoy the fourth line as it is, but then be prepared for a fight because you are going to get squeezed. Hey, look at what happened. Okay, so wonderfully, this was actually played incredibly well. I would say the initial accusation that Black was not playing like a 20Q was has now been resolved, and now Black is playing exactly like a 20Q would play. And so this is kind of where a game tends to fall apart. And this game fell apart for the very reason that a divide and conquer has worked. There's no base here. This is under attack. This is going to be very well connected. There's not going to be many issues even if White jumps in here. And this stone is now undefined. White actually has one living group here, one living group here, and this one is up for question depending on the invasion. So as far as DDK goes, this Black did fall apart exactly where Black should have fallen apart, just because of these divide and conquer techniques. Yeah, it is incredibly severe. It's that, but the thing is, like, this is, if it happens against you, this is why it happens against you. If it works against other players, this is why it works against other players. And so you have to pick and choose your battles. And from playing here, when White chose to come through, with this stone here, Black could have almost decided to do this now because White would have to make an extra move to knock that out completely. And it could. It would just require a minor adjustment, and then of course we would also have to concede to the possibility that it's okay to give up stone. And a common error for what you're going to see later in this game is a player did not want to give up any stones. And if you don't want to give up any stones, you are going to lose. So this is very good position for White. Black did come in on the fourth line again. This is a mistake because when White approaches, White's going to approach Incente. So this is also a very good expansion. This is very aggressive. So now what's happening is White's trying to take away all the ice space here. And what may have been better for Black is actually just creating something like this. It would work because the 3/3s for both of these corners is actually open and available for invasion. So White can choose to save one. Not a lot of good saving moves here. I've been partial to this lately. It's been powerful enough. But we're not going to worry about that. But with this group here, at least we have some eye shape. We have a beginning. We can do something. But now you can see how weak the fourth line really is now. The fourth line does have too many moves that'll work against it. And once White starts building a wall, it's going to be very difficult for Black to live successfully in here. So we can create a lot of fancy stuff, but it's not always going to be possible. So avoid the fourth line, because once you come in like this, if you come in this way, you get yourself a base. On top, where would it be okay? Are we talking the top of the board? Shoulder hits? Yeah. Right, if you're going to do a shoulder hit, but right now, with this kind of openness, we wouldn't be worried about that. So here, you can do fourth line on top for some influence. But here, most common is when you're going to find the kick. And then white would still influence over here and create some light shape. If black's going to be a little heavy, white's going to want to play just a little bit lighter. Yeah, the bottom is wide open. And black can opt to ignore this as well and play again on the other side just to see what white's going to do. Not that this is the most secure shape, but at least black is wedged in here, and if something happens, both sides won't be lost. And if white jumps in the middle, then at least white's going to be chased for a little bit. And there are some shenanigans that can happen against these white corners. The kick does have some tricks with it. The tricks are very exciting. I do enjoy them. And it would be great if I remembered any of them, but for the time being, I can't remember them off the top of my head. But that aside, that's just a quick difference between playing up higher and playing down lower. And even if you just come down one, it's just having all this extra ice space that's very difficult to invade once you hit the third line. And that's what it's going to be. If you don't have eyes, then really, what's the point? Alright, so white successfully squeezed out the base from black. Black did get away with a lot of good influence here. You are correct. Black's not too bad off. This is some good influence, but the only reason that this actually kind of works is because black did save a fair amount of territory over here. Yeah, exactly. It's all this troublesome Sente stuff that happens and forcing moves and everything else. But again, there's still a lot of high play over here, and when you come in on the third line, every once in a while, you know, black gets to live, especially if you've learned some of these tricks. So if black keeps running in the middle, when black runs in the middle, if white keeps chasing from the outside, all white does is solidify this, and it's going to take a lot of moves to enclose this. It's not one of those things that's going to be easy to defend. Well, it is, but this is what we want to get away from. So this is to teach the cues to work with these advantages and disadvantages. It's just giving you that edge up so that you can get better. We're not going to make you pros overnight, but if we can fix a few of the weak shapes, then just maybe some of these issues won't happen. Okay, so with a couple of forces, so a few issues here is the way things are getting responded to. One thing that happens is you don't always have to respond to your opponent's moves. And this is one of the biggest differences you're going to notice between the play with black and the play with white. Is white is able to ignore because white knows that 07, not saying it was a bad move, but it wasn't a forcing move. That's not a Sente move. It was just to help establish a bit of extra territory, but it didn't do anything else. So now black is bends over here to attack these 3 stones. If black ignores, then there's some trouble that's going to happen in here, and this would be a fairly big capture early in the game, especially when all that's left for black is the middle territory. So black is just responding to everything that white does. Well, that's the thing. There is quite a bit of pain that's on the board. So this now, this is that last bit that comes in, and this is pretty much where the game ended. Let's see, L17, 14. Yeah, there's a lot of pain. So with this one, this is that last little bit, and they say it's always good to learn how to read a ladder. And in this situation, the ladder did not work out in favor of black. So if you don't know how to read a ladder, you are going to have a bad time. And this is the kind of bad time that you're going to have. So from here, if you can read, I know it gets pretty close, but it's that liberty shortage on the second line that gets you. So in some situations, yes, this does work out because you come very close to your stone, but there weren't enough liberties when you finally hit the second line for it to be valid. Otherwise, this is probably what was read or what was anticipated. And yeah, this would have been something, and now you have a whole pile of cutting moves. So from here, this is a very good setup for white. To know that the ladder is there and to know that the ladder will work. And it would be in a situation like this, the only good thing that black gets is a ladder breaker. Oh, I didn't even look at the time settings. Okay, this was a correspondence game. And so with a correspondence game, there was definitely more than enough time. So yeah, you really don't have an excuse not to do that. And analysis was on. Yes, so when you look at the possibility of a ladder breaker, you can actually create a lot of extra territory. And if white is forced to respond to it, then there's not much that white can do otherwise. And yeah, black could section off a large portion up there. And the advantage that black has is this is a more secure corner than these 2 white corners. Which would be rather exciting. So in this game, I do have to say that this did offer a lot of good opportunity, and anybody who's been able to play Knight, Knight has been learning quite a bit very quickly, and I'm pleased to see exactly how quickly that they're growing in this game. And from the game that I reviewed last week to the game this week, this is leaps and bounds better. So yeah, so just a couple of weeks ago, Knight was already sitting at the 1920Q level, and is just coming up to 12Q. So that's a very quick advancement from playing like white just last month to playing like black just last month to playing like this now. This is a very big change. Well, I think the biggest question sometimes when you do have the ladders is, where do you want to play the ladder breaker? Do you want to play the ladder breaker right here? That's pretty close. You force your opponent to respond. And sometimes you can get some pretty good territory out of it, but then there's a lot open over here. Do you play it a bit farther back because we know it's going to be over here? And now you do have some awkward shape, not that it's bad shape, but now white gets to come in, and then you have, what are you going to have, a ladder breaker war? Although I have seen this, and it does actually make for a very interesting game after this, is when you have a ladder breaker war because someone decided to break the break, the break, the break. Well, it can come in handy, yeah. If black plays, then you can just take. See, it is slow. You are correct. So when you take, it is slow. However, this stone is now taken. The issue is solved. Nobody has to worry about it for the rest of the game. It's settled. It's done. All right, what else do we have? You know, that's not necessarily true. Just because you're a stronger player doesn't mean it's okay to make this small move either. Uh, black plays a ladder player, the ladder breaker, and white takes. This can still be a bad move because when you're talking about Dawn level games, if two moves like this get played in response to this very small move, then when you have two stronger equal players, you can't give up two very large moves in a row like this just to capture a stone. And it does. It's well, just like every game, it does depend on, what's going on the surrounding stones, who you're playing. Sometimes, like if the game was reversed, and there was a slight advantage for the other side. Yeah, if you know you have an advantage, sometimes it's better just to take so you don't lose the winning game. Right, and I used to be 5D once upon a time, and when I was 5D, I actually avoided ladders. It's one of those things that you just don't try to make it. You threaten that it could happen, and then it just doesn't happen. So as you actually get to the down level games, you don't see ladders and ladder threats as frequently, or they won't be developed the same way. So here, after this move is played, this is where you're going to read it's okay, I know there's going to be a ladder over here, so now I'm going to play the ladder breaker, and then let's see what white does. Well, if white plays this, then all they're doing is separating this one stone and this one here. And it would be better for black to take this, because this actually adds more surrounding support than this cut does. So in a Dawn level game, you read the ladder long before it happens. Yeah, after that, after the first 10 moves, it's pretty much spent. You should have a fairly good game set up. Okay, so we're going to do one more here, and we're going to do a game that is the opposite side. So this one was a 7 stone difference between black and white. And now we're going to do same player, but a difference in the opposite direction. So we can look at this in the way that uh, how strong your players look at black shape. And there's two types of strong players out there. So you have some people, all they want to do is win, and no matter what happens, they're just not going to give you a chance on the Goban. That's just their style. It's not good, it's not bad. It's a game nonetheless. So yeah, they're not going to take any chances. They're going to treat everybody as the most dangerous opponents. And then you get other players that are kind of like me. And just because you're a beginner player doesn't mean I have to completely wipe the board with you and win by 150 points. There's no fun in that. So, with my style of play, I like to create opportunities to see if you can read through them and essentially give you a chance to win at as many options as possible. So I would purposely leave open a cuts, purposely leave open anything whatsoever, invasions, anything. And I actually have lost to some people who are significantly weaker than me. But the thing is, they should be proud that they actually saw something that they probably shouldn't have even seen anyways. So this one is Knight 14k. Knight was 14k at the time. Well, exactly. And some people, they are just competitive. That is their personality type. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be competitive your entire life, that's up to you. And that is sometimes what keeps people growing and getting stronger. And then there's some people, they actually have more fun teaching. And personally, I don't care if I win or lose, just as long as the other person walks away with that much more knowledge. And that's what does it for me. That's why I keep playing. So I can get beat by a 15k today. That's not a problem. I'm not going to lose my shit over it and quit the game. That's okay. Because if the 15k walked away learning that much more, then I did my job. I did my job as a teacher. And even when it comes down to tournament time. All right, so 14Q versus 1Q. I gotta say, this is an incredibly good opening so far. Usually you don't see something as fancy as this, but then now the roles have changed. So when it was 20Q playing a 14Q, Black had a strong opening and then collapsed at around move 30. So now we have 14Q against 1Q, and Black does have a very good opening so far. Quite strong. Here's the first contact play. So you're saying this side would have been better? Frozen, this is game 26361961. Well, if we play, what did we have? Okay, so they played that sequence. Okay, so if we do this, and then this. Oh, no, that was the wrong one. That. So if we say we do this side, there's more potential. Opening theory does have a lot of... Well, again, that's why it's theory. So with something like this, back when I was learning about 15 years ago, the way my sensei taught me was initially that this was correct, and then later on that this was correct. The first sensei I had was only about 3Q, and when I finally switched to one that was 6 Dan, he was 6 Dan amateur, damn near pro from China, said that this was correct. Essentially, the argument is, because white's already developed on this side, that there's going to be a lot more potential for black. And that is kind of true. Black does have a bit more openness here, and if black jumps into the middle, then white's going to be divided even further. But both of these are kind of a game of divide and conquer as well. So if black really stretched out here, then white's cramped here, white's cramped there, and white doesn't have a lot of openness either. Right, it's always going to be how you play the rest of the game. And I think some of this is a matter of preference. In some of my previous reviews, I actually favor this situation here. From my point of view, I do see this as it looks better for black in a situation like this. And we'll just say white does a Shamari here. When black comes in, it's this dividing and conquering. But you can't even really call it that. What's going on is alive, alive, and alive for white. So you're not really threatening anything with this. It's just keeping things separate. That's all it's for. And with this, it's already separate. So this Joseki already does it for you. So you don't have to worry about it, and all black has to do is approach this corner. So the only thing I would say from something like this, because where these stones are, just maybe, in a situation like this, because you have surrounding stones, that coming in just a bit lower might work. And this will threaten that little bit of an invasion against white. So this may have actually been better than coming up on the fourth line. The fourth line is not always the strongest, and there's so many things that can be played against it. Where here, there's nothing around it, so this might actually be a little less secure, more territorial, but you'd get a better chance to secure this side. Yeah. All the possibilities. All the possibilities. But I would like something like this, coming on the third line. The fourth line play, and I've actually seen this too many times, and I would say, especially when you're going against a stronger player, you don't want to play high, light, and loose. You want to play low and light if you can do it. Because if you play too high, then what's going to happen is, well, precisely what happened. White knows just enough tricks to start undermining all this life, and when they squeeze those few points out 10 different times, it's just enough to keep a good win. Likewise, with something like this is also... In this sequence, white should respond. It would just be Sente for black. Things are still going well. And in this one, oops, white plays and black responds. And I'm not a big fan of these contact plays. They have been creating a lot of issues. And I find just creating a nice easy wall like that still encourages this. It is, and that's the problem here. So black should have played something like this, at least come out one more. Like this would have been a requirement. Right, but now the issue is, and I get Black's take on this one. Black's take was, there's all this openness. Let's do something with this openness now. But now with something like this, white can come back. White can play the Shamari, and well, again, this is the Sente portion. So white no longer has to respond to this or this. White has Sente, so this is the thing. With the other situation here, if you played it this way, there was a good possibility that white would have responded. Because if white plays elsewhere, then you can still play in and you wreak a little bit of havoc inside of this development. There's not a lot of there's not a lot stable in here for white. And if black comes out and is able to get away with something like this is actually uh, a pretty big reduction, especially this part of the game. So I would recommend in this situation the third line frequently, if done properly, should give you Sente. And now you wouldn't have to worry about it. So now the fourth line was a Gote move. You had to spend 2 extra moves just securing all this, or at least 1 extra move compared to the other situation. So black ignores. Not the worst thing. There are other moves that do work against this. That's not the problem here. There's a lot of fun stuff we can do against a group like this, which is not the issue. The issue is the Gote and you're not even quite securely approaching. You've come back. It's defended. Not bad. Yeah, P12 is good. And P13, where are we for P13? Yeah. Aji Keshi is something that does pop up quite a bit, and especially now with the AI reviews. They friggin' peep at everything, which is a little frustrating. And not only do they peep at everything, you can have a completely dead group along this side, and they peep at that too. And then we have a contact play, and when you have a contact play, yeah, now we're going to get into the heavy play as well. And so this is where the DDK, and this is why the DDK is going to lose to an SDK. The contact play is going to cause a lot of heavy shape, and when you have a lot of heavy shape, you have to respond properly so that you still have your eyes. This is actually not, it is and it isn't a good move for white. And let's see. So there was a clamp, come underneath, yes, not bad. So this is okay. So you've developed life over here. There's a ladder. We all like ladders. We know how much we like ladders from the previous game. And we have an eye here, we have an eye here. I would consider this a safe group. So, not a problem. And this isn't an issue either. Like, you actually can play. Like, so now that you know that there's going to be a ladder, you can ignore this for now, play against this. So if white's concerned about this breaker here, then you get the extra move against the corner. So it's what is white willing to give up? And then likewise, white plays to save the corner. Now we have the ladder breaker. White still has to come back, and black can play in Sente here against the corner. And what you're looking for is you're just looking to make the eye shape. Yeah. The other tactic. No matter what your opponent does, take every star point on the board and then start playing. It's actually not a bad tactic. It does have its benefits, and it really confuses your opponent as well. So in a situation like this, there are still things that can happen that do work. So here's the mistake for black. Saving a living group. You don't have to save a living group once it's a living group. So I'm fairly certain that there should not be any moves whatsoever that white can play against this group that will kill it. You can reduce the points. So right now, 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah, it's about an 8-point group. You could reduce the points, maybe it'll be worth 4 points, but you're not going to kill it now. This group is nice and comfortably alive. So what black should have done is play on the other side. And there's the couple of possible ways are go back to your divide and conquer. You know you need a ladder breaker, and you know this corner can be attacked. So what's your opponent going to choose? Is your opponent going to defend the corner or defend the ladder? Can't take both, can only take one. And what you can do with this is if white takes one, black can take the other, force this, and Viola, look at that. Yeah, if white has c6 already. So in this situation, black still had control of the board. Black still had a lot of good opportunity here. The only issue with this high play, I don't mind the high influence like this. This does come in handy, and it does force a little bit of bad shape here, is the lack of eye space. White is going to get the eye space play here, and it's going to be a little bit difficult for black to live. Although this is a known tactic that has been used, I still prefer the whoops, what did I say before? Yeah, this one here. The forcing moves. Maybe 3 at n6. 1, 2, 3. And if white ignores, what do we have going on in here? That does make for some interesting developments, but what's going to fall apart first? So yeah, it looks like something that should be responded to. But that's the thing. So if you do have these forcing moves on the board, and good job seeing that one, that actually does look like a very good forcing move. It looks like something that should be responded to. The capture should happen here. Because there's either way there's going to be a lot of forcing moves, so you would capture right away. Yeah, then you could force. You could force in a couple of different ways. Forcing this way works. Yeah, J5, that's absolutely fantastic. But that's the thing. So now that you have that, these are the forcing moves you should play. So this is where that little bit of fall apart happens. So there was a lot of potential on the board, and again, as far as Knight's plays go, Knight very fantastic through and through. But this is the first mistake. So this is the thank you move to your opponent. The thank you move is any move your opponent doesn't have to respond to because it is that small. It doesn't do anything whatsoever. So white actually was in a fair bit of trouble here. And then this first thank you move happens. And when this thank you move happens, apparently white responded to a thank you move. So white didn't need to respond to that. That could have been ignored. As white, it would have been... there are so many better moves that could have been played there. Like, just knocking this one on the head right there. You know, white could have just taken this as well. A good expansion. Yeah, you got the ladder breaker. And now if black comes in, significantly less severe. Although, we can still have some fun with this. It's just fun trying to attack things. But, either way. Yeah, so this one here, this would have been an okay ignore. White takes. So if you see what black is doing here, and this is actually very impressive, especially as a DDK, being able to keep forcing through all these moves and creating all these cutting shapes. This is absolutely splendid play, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I would say as white, it would have just been better to maybe just take and solidify this. Or come in this way, because yeah, you'd have to do a little bit of a wraparound. Something like that. Create a little bit of a ko. Black wouldn't be in good shape then. But here, this is kind of wrong. This is wrong for white. This is very good for black. And just pushing through like this, absolutely great. Connects. What does white do? White connects on one side, so black plays that. Yeah. Probably come in here. I would be a little less concerned about this. And what does this look like to everybody? Yes, these good old quotes that keep coming up. When there's a cut on the board, there's no other move. Right. Why is this Sente? Or why is this potentially Sente? Well, I wouldn't say N6 wins the game, but we would get pretty close on that one. This is it does create something very interesting. This is an attack against the group. This is a false I-No. So we have a false eye here. So if we keep in mind that that's a false eye and say if white plays over here and then black plays over here, back in this N6 move, which is a very good move still. So white would save the group on the left, and now the group in the middle here is in trouble. This is needed for an eye, but if the eye happens, then black's going to play out this way and chase. And it's the chase that's that keeps things weak. Likewise, white would want to create a move like this that would be able to bridge these two together, and it makes it that much more difficult for black to keep this separated. But if that happens, then black will come in over here and takes the potential away from this group, because this is just a clumpy group of stones. Well, running's not that difficult. White does have a lot of support on the board. But the thing is, first of all, knight being DDK, that would have been absolutely fantastic to keep somebody stronger on the run. That's just very exciting to see. When stronger players make a mistake, because I gotta say, as some stronger players, they get very competitive, but then they also get cocky. So they're going to see someone who's like, oh, well, this person's 15 stones weaker than me. What do they know? And then suddenly they get stuck in a chase, and every once in a while lose a game because of it. But likewise, and if you look at it this way, this is... Uh-oh. If this is a 14 stone difference, and this is now move 51 of the game, and black is one move away from still dominating the game. 14 stone difference. So as a DDK, your knowledge is actually not that much difference. It's just someone who's 5 and 10 stones stronger than you should know when and where to play better than you. You already know what bad moves are by this point. At 14Q, you know you're not going to play this move, so you already know what you're not going to do. It's just the order that you are going to do. So yeah, this would have been that much of a game-changing move. So again, this goes back to, if you're going to make a living group live on this side. Eye space takes away eye space. You get to do an attack, you capture a stone, you make a living group, you create a bit of territory, You're doing all of that, and you're dividing and conquering. So very powerful move that way. If white comes out, then you're fine. That portion's settled. You come in on this side. And if the other side is played, then you would attack from that direction. And even then, you don't have to attack this stone right away. You should. White should connect that somehow, and then you can come in and hopefully, just hopefully, if all goes as planned, maybe this can work in your favor. And you don't always go for the kill. Chances are white's going to know how to get out of something like this. If something like this can be gotten out of. You never know. Or white's going to completely mess it up and be done for. Maybe, maybe not. But the game really is that close. And another thing, don't leave a hanging ko. A hanging ko is just going to work against you. And in this situation, the hanging ko could have done just that. So if black gets paranoid, comes in there, then this is a very different game now. Very different game. For white to have this influence and knocking out these 3 stones. You go from being the predator to being the prey, and that's not what you want to do. Why, thank you. I try and be clear with stuff like this, and this is my goal is as a DDK. This is kind of the insight we have as SDK or Don level. That this is what we look at, and you know what? Maybe the opponent knew, maybe the opponent didn't know. I will do them as often as I can, but I do have some pretty tight time constraints. I work nights, sleep weird hours, work long hours. But I am dedicated to these Saturday streams. I just got to find a time when I'm actually awake, conscious, and not doing something else. And there have been times I've been awake yet still unconscious, and you don't want to be part of those streams, that's for sure. Okay, so this stone actually does have a bit of extra meaning now. And in the event that there was a divide and conquer in a chase that happened, this is actually a very future move. As an SDK playing another SDK, I would play a move like this, not because I'm knocking out this stone, but because I intended to chase this group into my stone. That there was going to be a lot of dividing and conquering going on. So that's what I would be seeing as SDK against SDK. And now this hanging ko, has completely changed. It's now a game-deciding move. So should white win this, there's a good possibility that black just may not have enough to carry on. Although the game is still pretty tight. It's one of those things that when white no longer has to worry, and white's already the dominant player here, when white no longer has to worry, then that's when you're in trouble. So the ko happens. Black's spending all these extra moves knocking out 1 stone. Well, the influence does have to be used, and it's actually being wasted. So this move is actually wrong. So if N13 is wrong, where should black play in Sente right now? If we're not going to worry about this here, and yeah, there's probably a lot of moves against this where... Oops. So there's a lot of moves black can get against this later on. But ko aside, this is wrong. If this ko can't be won, and we're going to say the ko can't be won right now, this may not be killable, but it's going to be reducible. Where should black play? Where's the biggest move on the board? On right middle. All very good moves. I do like those so far. But the question did come up, or statement anyways, from Jill that says that influence has to be used. So here's a possibility here. Just something to throw out there. So if white captures and is able to create a lot of influence on the board, what do you want to do with it? So say you can do something like this. White captures, black does this. What is this influence worth? Well, not really. There's not a lot of attack that'll happen with this. If false eye, real eye, white's alive. But if white can't expand this into territory, all it was worth was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 points so far. All these stones are worth 6 points. So if white can't expand to all this and make this influence work, the only thing white can do now is try and separate and force stones into this influence. Small moves like this wouldn't even be beneficial at all because it's all you do is gain an extra point for it. So these are things that wouldn't be worried about yet. So essentially, if white's going to develop very large influence like this because of a little bit of a ko, then all black has to do is negate said influence. And even then, you can do that a different way. So instead of playing at 3, you can play here. It is a little close to the influence, or even play over here, which is even safer. Because even if white jumps into the middle, there's nothing there. This influence can't be used for anything. Yeah. That works. So if your opponent is looking at capturing something so large, and you do have a possibility of taking away that influence, take away the influence. This would be a very good exchange. C14, I would say, would actually be nice for white. So this is one of those things that now, instead of being able to fight this ko, after a move like this is one of those unsettled things that maybe white should do this instead. So hypothetically, now that this happens, if something gets defended and then whatever black does. So now if white gets this ko, after developing something like this, it's completely different now. So it's the order that the moves happen. So C14 is actually nice for both parties. Let's have a look-see. So what if we C14 and then white connects and then still come in? Yeah, C14 can still work in this method as well. It's whatever you do to make sure your opponent can't develop. However, yeah. And a situation like this is only worth 2, 4, 6, 8 more points. You are correct. White would just take the other side, but what I'm trying to portray here is it's not what white's going to take. It's the value of only trying to capture one stone. It is in white's benefit here, white's connected and doesn't have to worry about being attacked anymore. But to white's detriment, there was a lot of potential with that influence, but because of the sequence of moves that were made, it is no longer beneficial. So that's what I'm saying with this. So it's just that, and also, as an example, not every game is going to have this as an option as well. So sometimes it could be one of those Ko's where it doesn't have this extra move. And for example, if white has to make 2 moves, then what I'm saying is when you do have all these options, that's the difference as well. Yeah. A damn good smothering too, that's for sure. Okay, we have a very good... Okay, so this is a valid point here. So now that white took this, black decided to try and save the corner, which is influenceable. Maybe there is a killing move in here. Oh, is that a killing move? That would be terrible if it was. Maybe not. Nah, probably not. So we'll say that can live. That looks livable. 3/3's come in pretty handy. Alright, so we have a lot of problems in here now. You are correct. There was a lot of benefit to white after this. There's a couple things that happened. First of all, calculate the value of this stone. We'll say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 points. And it took how many stones to kill it? And it's not even dead yet. This is one of my favorite DDK things that happens. Is you get very caught up in a single stone. And the thing is, you have one of the worst mentalities to have is to kill everything, even if it's just a single stone. If it just happens that throughout play you can kill a stone or a group of stones, that is fantastic. But that should never be your aim. That is just a... you can actually create that aim elsewhere. Let's see. So black played here just because of this whole group development. White plays in, and now we'll say black does this as a move against this group over here. So your goal is to kill this stone. But as you're killing the stone, look what happens. As you chase this group, you build a wall. As you expand over here, you kill the stone indirectly. You don't kill it directly. Exactly. So a Frozen has it correct there. So 20 points for 9 moves. It's an average of 2.22 points per move. But now if you did something like this stone is still pretty dead looking. There might be Agi in it someplace, but the amount of Agi it had before is significantly lowered. But you get this much more development over expanding in a different method. Seven points per move? That is absolutely insane. I can only do that after a couple of drinks, but that was the issue from last night. So, this development now, instead of wasting all those extra moves surrounding a stone, attacking it directly. This one stone is worth 7 points. So now that we've captured it in a roundabout way, got my 7 points back. So now, if you look, this is no longer saying that it took, well, now it's a few more than 9 stones. It's now no longer, now you can't say it took 11 stones to kill 1 stone. You use the 11 stones to influence this group, reduce it, because now it's only running on the second line. You've increased your territory, you've expanded, and now you have a bit more potential, and this co is still not settled yet. So instead of settling at 7, maybe you come back now, and let's start fighting the co. This is that point where you say, alright, bring it on! Show me what you can do! And see what happens. And it's not the best co to win, but there are some advantages to it. This little division in here is going to cause a fun chase, but we'd have to see what Black's going to give up for that. But anyways, so this entire development here, you could attack directly or attack indirectly and accomplish the exact same thing. Right. So it is more efficient, and this is what you want. You want that increased efficiency there. So now you've attacked a stone, and not only have you attacked a stone. No, that's okay. It is an interesting. This is one of those things that I can't even really. It's one of those. How do you train someone out of this? How do you teach someone to not capture single stones like that? And it's not as like, well, you're just being inefficient. You're just being inefficient. This is what the AI tells you when your move is worth minus 50. So maybe this was one of those minus 50 moves. But what you want to look at, though, is you don't want to play directly to try and kill a stone. You want to play a bit more indirectly. Maybe you're going to play a little bit like this. So this is still good over here. And depending on what happens, white would have to play towards the stone now, as opposed to with it. But that expansion that you get, that's the difference. Well, keeping your groups from dying is probably what it's going to take to get everybody to finally be 9Q. Keeping your groups from dying is usually a very good thing to have. So here we get the fancy sword Joseki, and it gets settled quite easily. We're moving towards this stone again. After C something, yeah. So here's another thing. So now that black spent all these moves trying to kill 1 stone, this still isn't a secure corner because white is still using moves to play towards it that'll force black to respond, that are developing white's strength. White can use an extension, yes, but here's the problem. What's the rule for stone extensions? Yeah, but here's the thing, unless you have at least 4 stones here, this is a pretty big reduction here. So all these ladders that keep popping up. But they are necessary for the escape. This is another thank you move. This stone does have some potential, but But this is a thing now, because the way that this was attacked, White's been able to develop everything else around it. So where did we have? So I would say somewhere's around this move here, at N13, coincide at N13. All right, so 55 moves into the game. I would say this would be around where Black lost momentum. Black still had potential. There was still a Ko that could be fought. After this, the game just fell apart completely. So after expending all these moves here, White already had a good lead. Yes, and but the thing is, what the AI doesn't tell you is why. And that's one of the biggest failings of trying to learn from AI. Like if you look at the AI and it tells you that this move here was minus 50, it doesn't really tell you that it was why it was minus 50. The only thing it's going to say is, you know what, you should have played this because it's better. Why is it better? It doesn't matter. I'm telling you it's better, so just play it. So it's not the best learning opportunity when you're going against going with an AI like that. And this one, yeah, it's should the Ko be won? Then we have this division in here. This group is separate from this group. Now the AI does have some use once you start seeing things like this on your own. So if I told you that this is better just because it keeps these two groups separate, when the computer tells you to do the same thing, you're going to look at it and go, oh yeah, this is a divide and conquer technique. But if you don't know that ahead of time, this is again, if you don't know what an Ajikeshi is, if you don't know about your peeps and probes and everything else, then you don't know what this means. But when you learn it from a stream like this, and then you go over the review from the AI, and you see what the AI does, it's like, you know what? I didn't know I could peep there. Now I know I can peep there because the AI said that it was okay. And as a human, even I wouldn't have considered that as a peep. It's just, it's not my style of play. Likewise, with this division in here, it might have suggested something a little bit different. I would say this may have been suggested by the AI. Well, that all depends. It depends on where the wall is. Okay, is the wall right here? Are you going to extend from this wall here? Are the stones over here and you're extending over there? This is very territorial and defensive. There's a situation where you only extend this way, and that's because this is a standard I shape. It's not always about the threat. Uh, so yes, sometimes you can bait. There's a lot of reasons, but sometimes you have no other choice, and what you want to do is you want to create your eye. If you can't run, and you have no choice but to make eyes, sometimes you extend because you want to make that eye. Right. You can, if you bait your opponent, walls like that from the bottom left. Okay. Yeah, but walls of influences can be interpreted in a couple of ways. Jill, it's not often that I disagree with you. When I first came back to OGS and found out that they had AI reviews for every game, even after I went through that little bit of tutorial on how to interpret what the moves mean, like the plus 10, minus 10, it still didn't teach me much until my local sensei here, he actually taught me how to interpret the moves. And now I'm taking what I was taught and bringing him here. So as an SDK or even a DDK, when you do look at an AI review, you still have to know what the moves mean because every move has meaning. And not every DDK is going to know what it means. So it will have benefit, but I think as humans, we're going to require every avenue to try and understand this together. The AI can get you from 20 to 15Q, but what's the point of going from 20 to 15Q if you don't know why? All right, where are we now? We are all the hours into a stream. Jill, do you have anything you would like reviewed today? I know you usually have a lineup of games ready to go. And I think last week we didn't get to many of them. And I don't think I got to any of them when I streamed yesterday at midnight. Last week at midnight. For those that don't know me, I don't have a concept over time. Well, I would definitely like to look at that game. I do want to give everybody the opportunity to submit a game. I don't mind reviewing for just 1 or 2 people, but if we do have 10 people and they all want to review, then I will keep on going with as many as I can get. I will take games from anyone if the game is something that I can review. I was recently in the AGA Open, the online Open that they had a couple of weeks back, and after I was done my games, I actually reviewed for my opponents, but I actually reviewed them just as an SDK to SDK, and then that was it. As far as a DDK review goes, uh, I don't mind bringing some SDK onto the stream if it does have that much more value. But what I want to get away from, well, first of all, we do have a lot of streams out there. We do have a lot of fantastic streams. If you watch people like Dwyron, you can actually play the Dwyron drinking game, and every time he's in the middle of a game and says, "That's a GG," you take a shot, or you take a sip, and anytime he says, "That's a GG," and then loses his game, you just chug the entire drink. So he's very good. He's very strong, but you have to be at a very specific level to understand the game sometimes. And he is very good, very fun to watch, and I really enjoy his streams. But as a DDK, if you're 15Q and trying to understand more in depth when he just says, and this does this and then that does that, and doesn't explain it, it becomes problematic. So we do have a lot of great players out there, and I really enjoy watching their streams. But there's not a lot of variation, and even in the reviews, it always assumes that you know what's going to happen. And I have no problem. If I say there's a ladder there, I will play it out every single time if that's what's going to help you visualize it. Because I want the DDQs to understand as visually as possible. And then once you get enough learning from someone like me, you can go on to these stronger streams. And when you look at them and they say, you know what, that's going to be a ladder, you could look at it and go, you know what, I remember that shape. I know it's going to be a ladder, but now you don't have to think of it as much. You can just carry on. And I think that's the biggest difference in a lot of these streams. Likewise, with SDK, there are a lot of opportunities for SDK to learn as it is. And I'm back down to 6Q on OGS. If there is something that I have to bring to the table, by all means, I will do it because there are things that I see because I still have a little bit of Dawn left in me, but just not as much as I used to. But yeah, it's if it is something that is a very good learning experience, if you know that it would help a lot of people because it's something that's commonly overlooked, then I will bring it up. But as SDK games and down level games come up, there's a lot less that even I can see. I'm just not that focused on it where I can go through an entire game and say, you know what, well, possibly this or that, and there'll be two things. Where with a DDK game, there's a lot of things that we looked at, and we can just go on. And really, if you look, I spend about 45 minutes just on the first 50 moves of a game, because this is where the games are won and lost, especially at the DDQ level. Is you're won or lost within your first few moves like that. Oh, I didn't even see the outcome of this. So, this was played recently, Japanese rules, one ranked. It was a live game. Analysis was available. Result was 18 points, and I'm guessing by couldn't catch up means you didn't win this one. So anybody who's played Jill, you will know she is quite relentless, and she will attack everything and destroy you. This Barba 2021, I have not run into this opponent yet, so let's see what kind of skills they have. Alright, now that we've watched that in reverse. Oh, and another thing for this stream, I'm not going to be reviewing any pro games. I used to review pro games in my much younger years, and I did that on a regular basis. If you review pro games on your own, or if you want to review pro games separately from this, I would not be against that. I was actually thinking of creating a Discord stream that would be more of a private study group. But as a public forum like this, it's not a lot that I feel that is able to be offered from an SDK to try and interpret the moves of professionals. For us, I do believe that this might be a little bit too advanced. Definitely for me, it's not where I would like to be on it. Maybe one day. Maybe I'll get good enough again one day. Hmm. Definitely interesting. It might be useful to DDK, who knows? You know, I'm always willing to give it a shot. If there's anything that's yeah, that was a great reviewer. His lecture on shape. I used to do a lecture on shape, and when I finally ran into his lecture on shape, finally figured out what I don't really know. But okay, I will queue that one up for the next review. Okay. So an interesting active aggression very early on in, and thank you for the game there, and we'll see what we can get to on that one. So early on, white had just a little bit of a light shape here, gets corrected, and black keeps pressing. But would it have been better to come back and protect the cut? And Jill, with your games, it's getting a little bit more difficult to review sometimes because you play some really interesting moves, that's for sure. But I think what really gets exploited here, and you do see that in the following move, that it does leave a cut that's open, and this is no longer an attackable shape whether or not the cut's been defended. It is, but after this now you would be forced to try and defend. You would be forced into a chase here, and this is a very big development for White early on to have the group separated like this. So if you're going to plan for something that happens later, you have to make sure you're alive earlier, and this is, yeah, this is tough when you get divided early on because now you're on the run this way, you're going to be on the run that way. And the most you're going to get out of it otherwise, we'll just say White does whatever. This is essentially the last viable move you get against this group is going to be a move like this. But you still have to defend over here. So this is a little bit of a bad position to be in early in the game. So if you defend it here, even if White comes out, this is second line territory, so it's nothing to be worried about. And no, you don't want that cut early. So what are we going to do here? All these possible terrible moves. Either way, it's on the second line. I wouldn't worry about it. You take your second line, you squeeze this one out, and you'd probably be okay from a standpoint like this. But not being divided early on, and likewise, that also puts you way behind. With this here, if these two stones get knocked out, you no longer have that same influence. These stones here, this is huge. This is absolutely huge on the board, and it really takes away everything that you had already developed in those first few moves. So there was a lot that works against you just from this initial cut. D14 is absolutely devastating, and from here, White can no longer make the cut. The most White can do is make the peep, but if White makes the peep, it's still not that beneficial yet because the moves that would be required against this group, and likewise, just the territory that you can get from it otherwise. Like this cut would be completely pointless this early in the game if Black's able to properly expand. So prevent first. Prevent, do the connection. D14 would have been absolutely necessary here. Not only was it your opponent's next best move, it was going to be your next best move, and it was your move to take it. Likewise, should something like this develop, just hypothetically, you still get the divide and conquer portion as well if you don't expand as far, and you should not expand as far when your opponent's already approaching your groups. So an enclosure like this is stable. Your opponent's going to live. Let your opponent live, and then move on. But move on with life. And there we go. So this is, if there's a cut on the board, then there's no other move on the board. So this is where it starts. Now you'd have to work at capture the cutting stones. Can you capture the cutting stones? It's going to be very difficult to capture these cutting stones, especially from this point of view here, that if you have to run, this wall is going to be quite massive. So you're going to have to do a lot of distraction to your opponents and see what you come up with. Alright, so now you get all the influence. You have all the influence that you'll ever need on the board. I would say this isn't too bad. Take it first. Some pretty bad shape to be in. It might have been good just to press through, force your opponent into bad shape. Because even if you, because there's a lot of Sente moves in here. A lot of Sente before you have to worry about that one. And this would be one of those situations. Building that life from the wall could have been beneficial. Or at least now that the badness has started. Not necessarily. If you leave it here, I would leave it just like this for some fun co-threats maybe, but otherwise, well, they're not going to do that. They play here and then just leave this hanging. This is fine to leave hanging. All you wanted to do is make sure they don't get those extra 5 points. This is a very good reduction in Sente. What I would have as a takeaway from this is, can you develop more before you have to come back and do this? Because white having a very large Moyo over here, and especially with these two stones being cut off already, this is when you're really going to have to worry about your development. And there'll be a time that you have to come in, and this is probably going to be that time. And now you get to give chase. Now that you have the wall, use it. You have these. There's still a lot of Aji left here. This is alive. This is alive. This is alive. But now, can you knock this out? After the Shamari is made at G3, this is the time to attack. You made territory. There are things that can be done against the territory over here. No doubt about it. Not concerned about that. But if you can attack this first, now that you're connected through here, because if white comes in, just capture. You should be okay for eyes throughout this group, which is why you're going to leave it hanging. These are the Miyai points. So if opponent takes there, you're going to take there, you could take here. There's a lot on the board that you can keep using for eyes. So this is what you would look at. This is why you would play and then settle. If your opponent wants to come back, let's get back into a thank you move. That's a thank you move. Now you come out and do this. They want to do that. That's a thank you move. Now you just capture all that, and now there's no problems. So if they're that concerned about small points, they're going to be continuous thank you moves for you while you're knocking out something else. So you do have the ability to come in early, and this would have been the opportunity. Black, white, yeah, okay. Okay, so they're still undecided here, so it's fine that it's undecided, because you could still use that later on. So this is the wrong side. You're already strong over here. You have all the influence. You have a lot of strength, and this is that last bit they require to develop their influence. And if you're not careful, you give it to them. So here, it's still a good time. Don't worry about this stone. It's a little too far out. So as you chase it out, you're going to be giving it an opportunity to run to this future wall. So you already have to be thinking of this future wall here. If you can extend this wall, come around, maybe you could knock this out that early in the game. So yeah, there's so this would have been it. So even if it wasn't here, this is good placement. That's too deep. Then I would have come out here already. This is still good timing on that part. And you should not. You know what? Maybe just one. Oops. Maybe just one more, because I don't like that liberty shortage in here with this little bit of a corner. Oops. Does that work here? Oh no, that still would have been okay. Alright, so yeah, that's fine. All those things you have to worry about. Well, yeah, I've said 4 is fine before, and then somehow my opponent manages to kick my ass. Alright, so in this situation, though, 4 was fine. So we have a possibility here. You recover from this and develop all the territory. Now it's influence against influence. This is still a very fine exchange, because you're running on the second, third, fourth, fifth line here is better than running on the first, second line here. So you would have still been in a pretty good situation if your opponent is that crazy and wanted to run and try and save everything, and then come back and save in Gote. Because there's still a lot of cutting points here that would have to be worried about. This is not good shape for white to be in. If white just ignored, and you carried on this way, you could still potentially make that into a nice success, because this territory here is worth more than this string of stones. And you still don't have to worry much about this stone yet. And you still get a good reduction over here. So instead of attacking the one stone, it would have been time to attack this. Attack the cutting stones. We have other possibilities. So if you play here, and your opponent ignores because they think that this is the next biggest move, then you also get some future moves as well, because now you know what this can turn into. If your opponent takes a corner, you take a corner. I would still consider it balanced. There's some shenanigans you can do against such a thing. Oops. But yeah, if you start attacking too early, and this may have been attacking too early, you can be destroying your own potential later on. And if you are going to attack, you have to keep attacking. You can't just play elsewhere right away. You would have to have these peeps in there. Make your opponent as heavy as possible, and while your opponent's becoming heavy, use that to develop. At this point in the game, your opponent is no longer able to come back and just play in. That is way too much to give up with this surrounding influence. You could have done c6 at c12, but you still could have settled this first as well. You don't have to have this move in here. This is where your opponent's going to jump for life, and you still have a fairly good connection there. You still could have played it here. You could have forced this sequence here. Your opponent comes in, and just let it happen. So this is an example of you're going to extend from a good wall. They have one eye, but that's it. This is a very big investment for 1 point. And we still have cutting stones here. The only problem with this is as this develops, you're going to be pushing towards this now. And that's going to change the dynamics of what's allowed to happen over here. So sometimes you get to choose, and you do get to choose. At a point in the game right here, you get to choose what did you want to attack. At this point in the game, your thickness was better. You developed it first. You gave your opponent thickness from here. So now you get to choose, and this is one of those. And I know time was short. You only had a 20-minute game, and to some people that does sound like a lot of time, but it's really not. When you only have 20 minutes to make your 180 moves, that still boils down to being 30 seconds a move. It's a lot to decide, attacking this stone or attacking the cutting stones. I would side in the favor of capture the cutting stones. That seems to be a pretty good thing to do. In the history of adages of Go is capture the cutting stones. And as you influence just 2 stones, you do get a lot of development. And even if the development just happened this way, this is still something that you can be happy with. Like developing this kind of territory to the nothing here, The most that's going to happen is this cut, but if the cut happens, you still have the life options. So don't worry about it too much, but when you do have the option, capture the cutting stones and then come back. Because now this doesn't mean much. And even if you ignored 17 because you do have enough eye space here, then come back, do the influence thing, attack, peep, and now you're negating influence. You're still attacking this. There's still many things, but so much anguish, so much anguish. So yeah, so you lost that opportunity, and the cutting stones got captured. Mr. Darth, I am teaching. I am an SDK. Sometimes I'm a Dawn level player. It all depends on how much I've had to drink that night. And I am teaching DDK. And thank you, John Cullen, and for having all these fantastic raiders to my channel. This is the Q Club Q Corner Q review. And if you are DDK, and sometimes even a 9Q, I will make an exception for, especially if the other half of your graph says you're still DDK. There is still a lot to learn. So yes, DDKs, I do want them to learn as much as possible. There's a lot of very strong streams out there, but they still have some difficulties with some of the basics. So I want to get as many of the basics out of the way for as many DDK as possible. Well then, if you have any games that you would like reviewed, I don't review any of my own games. The only exception to that is if I play a game against somebody that's a DDK, that there's a very good learning opportunity within that game, I will review it, but I'm not reviewing for me. I'm reviewing for the DDK side on all the DDK portions. So and it is a strictly review channel. I don't do any live games. I was thinking of that as an idea, where if two DDKs were playing, I would do live commentary on the DDK games. But all I need is a game link. Any game links that do pop up, I will do my best to get to as many as possible. I'm finally getting comfortable with the longer reviews. I finally had a 3-hour review last week, or 3-hour stream anyways. So maybe I could break that and go 4 hours this week. Who knows? But yeah, we're just here to have a lot of fun and see what we can get out of this game. And in this one, so here's a little bit of a problem. The other issue I would say, my rank, I'm between all the Qs. Right now I'm 6Q. Last month I was 3 Dawn. A couple of days ago I was 9Q again for some reason. And I think in a couple of days I'm going to be back to 3rd Q. So take your pick. Yes. And there's another interesting move here. I don't know if you've ever played it before. This I don't mind, but one of the worst things I find is approaching a Shamari like this. It's this one here. This is a little bit of an old school setup that happened. This was introduced to me back in the good old days of 2000 and something, maybe 2006-ish. And it actually holds. It actually holds today. I've been using it quite frequently in some of my correspondence games on Dragon Go server. And if ever I'm falling behind and I bugger up and I give my opponent too many Shamaris, I play this. And typically, you get a good result. Like, this really is a good result if you're going to play it on the 4th line. With the development over here, you can extend one more and play it on the 3rd line. On Fridays, I do. So if you ever want to see some some fun gameplay, if you ever catch me playing any of my live games on Friday, that's the only day of the week that I permit myself to imbibe anything. I I do imbibe enough, and then I'll play either on OGS or I'll play on KGS and see exactly how much I can either amaze myself by playing phenomenal games or playing things that are so asinine I can't believe I even did that. And then that's when it's time to have another drink. And then on Fridays, you missed it. I play the Dwyron drinking game, and anytime Dwyron says that's a GG, you take a sip, and anytime he says that's a GG and then loses the game, you have to chug the entire drink. And then next thing I know, it's 8 in the morning and can't remember what happened the night before. So, but nothing against him. I do really enjoy his streams. He is absolutely fantastic. Very, very powerful player and very knowledgeable. I really happy to have him around. I do like when he does his reviews. I think he does them with Daniel ML as well, another fantastic streamer. But likewise, same thing. If you're watching Daniel ML, the Daniel ML drinking game is every time he laughs at something silly because he has a cute laugh, take a sip. But that's just the crazy stuff that we do out in the country here. Yeah. So there's a couple of possibilities when you approach a corner like this. There's always some fun that can be had. This stone is too far, so you can have some fun with a crosscut here. The crosscut is often misplayed in a corner. You can. Some people don't like taking that because there's codes that pop up, and if it's too early in the game or if you miscount your threats, then don't do it right away. Unfortunately, with anything that happens in the corner here, and it always starts with this, it's going to work against the opponent. So if black approaches like this, black should always come away with something good. Sometimes white approaches on this side, and I'm probably not going to remember it today, but there is a valid sequence where you should be able to get life in the corner here, and it is very devastating, especially if it's much later in the game, and you should never really play an entire game and still have an entire corner open again. But this has been my where are we? There we go. This has been my favorite approach, and it works whether it's the Ogama or the Okama itself. So if, oh man, all right, I'll use the other tool. So it works in that situation, or it'll work here as well. So either way, it doesn't matter what happens. It's just the crosscut sequence will change. So the crosscut sequence in this, it does change just a little bit if the stone is over here. But overall, you should get a very good turnout for this. And the very best settlement that you should have as your opponents will just play something like this. And that's still going to be good. But whatever you do, I would say just this is one of the very few actual contact plays that I approve of, and you should also recognize it if black already had a stone here. It's going to be the same concept. If black already had a stone there, then this is exactly how you would approach the corner. B3. You're gonna jump in and just do the 3-3 from this from that situation. Right. But that didn't happen. So what we have here is we have this connection. We have the fun kick. Black comes up. Now this was actually a very good extension from white because it really squeezes the potential for black here. And there's a couple of possibilities that black can do. This isn't an issue either, but essentially, uh, if your opponent's on the third line, and this is what I've been coming up with, is you should frequently come up on the third line as well. If for no other reason that you get this move here, essentially, and I do believe that his name was brought up earlier, Deshaun or something like that. This guy was absolutely amazing in his teaching. That he has this stream, he had, anyways, while he was still around, where he actually taught a lot of these basic shapes, and he had names for them all. And likewise, this is a good shape. You have this little bit of a, I believe this one's called a table or something like that. And it's the beginning of all your eyes. And if you look at some games, if all you did when you watched a pro game was look at the shapes that they make, if you study those shapes and made those shapes in your game, the Don shape, I have. It could be. He does talk about the weaknesses of these shapes as well. It's one of those things I wouldn't mind actually reviewing his stream and bringing it up because his lessons. I'm gonna find the link and I'll definitely bring it up in my next game. But if unless anybody actually has it queued up someplace, it is a 3-hour long video, and he actually jumps into some game reviews right after. You really only need the first 90 minutes or so. Here we go. Yeah. Okay, so I'll post it. Give everybody credit for things that are done. I don't even know if I'll be able to pop it up on this screen. Oh man, now it's not even fit for my screen size. But either way, so it's actually a very awesome lecture. It is 3 hours long, and all it does is talk about these shapes. So if that's the first thing everybody does right after this is go to that and watch it. For a DDK, it is an incredibly good thing to add to your repertoire of skills. And there have been times, like when I came back, I had a hiatus. If you look up my play history on OGS, I tried coming back a couple of times, but I'm finally back. It's been a year now that I've been back playing. I watched his lecture, and then I played for like 15 days straight of only making these life shapes, and then suddenly I'm getting back into my SDK. I climbed back up to 5-4 and 3Q very easily again. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's who said that? Was that Jill that said it earlier? It's talking about life. It's like, yeah, you have to make life. You have to know when you're alive. And all life and death aside, if all you knew was shape, then life and death is going to come with it. Because not only does he teach you the shape, he teaches you the weakness of the shape. And every shape has its own inherent weakness. But the chances of you getting to play against that weakness, maybe they'll be there, maybe they won't. So here we get a fancy, this is the, yeah, whatever fancy name for the move it is. Anyways, fourth line. I'm not too keen on the fourth line moves because white can come in underneath and it forces black into a bad shape like this. There are situations when it's a good move, but white's already very developed and unfortunately did the one thing that had to happen, is keep the cutting stones captured. The Aji in these stones is gone now. And if, hypothetically, you could win something like this, which black doesn't even have to fight, then, sorry, white doesn't even have to fight, then maybe, just maybe, you could make life out of this. But without these cutting stones living, or these cutting stones here, they're both cutting stones. Without these living for either side, the game is very different from here, and I don't think from here it would have been possible for black to catch up now, because white just had that little bit of extra development with something like this. It was close, but not close enough. Right, and so now here you're trying to exchange influence when you're being attacked. So this was a little bit of an issue. Uh, Not a bad move, but I don't think there was anything left in here that could have even worked. Yeah, because of that, that's going to be captured. Just maybe you could have knocked out these 3 stones, but that's a lot of extra moves to knock it out when you've already lost so much over here. This would have been one of those potential future moves later on that could have looked fancy and they ignored, but not now. This is a pretty devastating move. You'd actually have to come up now with the divide and conquer portion. Wall gets built, capture this, and play towards this stone. Don't play with that stone. You could play with that stone. Hey, look, we made that fancy table again. Maybe you could play with that stone and it works. This is the power of shape. But you have to respond to this. This is an absolute must respond to. And if you're going to respond, the absolute best response is going to be divide and conquer. Your opponent plays that way, play this way. Keep cutting. Keep separating as much as you can. This is going to be what's most beneficial for you on this one. Is the divide and conquer. But this here, this is divide. This stone is now separate from these 2 stones, and this is the closest stone of support to this group. So you have to do something against it. And you don't play with the weak stone over here. You would play with this group, because this still has a place to run to right now. So I would cut this way. Cutting this way would be the best, because now your opponent gets to decide what to save, and then I like playing towards stones. See what gets knocked out. I think you have to come across the bottom first. Yeah. Typically that's the way it would be played. Because I don't think that's... oops. I think one could live quite comfortably down there. There will be a little bit of extra shenanigans types. But yeah, you'd have to save your cutting stones. And if you're going to save, another issue is this. The side you have to save on. And I think the frequently, you come across the bottom. Because any cut that happens in here, you're usually in favor of laddering into the side here. So come across the bottom first. But then again, this gets into the same issue we had before. Cutting stones, can you save them? So now that you've cut, but this is a little bit of a contentious issue because these should have been separated first. A lot of extra groups on the board, but now black has 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. White has 1, 2, 3 groups. So I think white's in the better situation here. Yeah, you still could have made this work. Come up from this side. And now the shape is completely different due to the surrounding stones. Good life here. Stone to play against, stone to play with over there. So there's a lot of potential for life under here for black now. So even if black lives, this is knocked out. This is just a string of stones, no life. There's a little bit of an issue in here. A lot of things that can be played towards. But just this F13 stone. This F13 stone was the thank you move in the situation. Once you're under attack, respond right away. Don't give your opponent the chance. But I think that within the first 50 moves, I think that was fairly detailed enough. The rest of the game, otherwise, due to the attacks, yeah, the cutting stones here were lost, and this can still be divided. There's still some that can happen here. But now, all right, so now we have G6 here. That's a tough one. Can maybe fight your way out with it. So with F16, this battle shouldn't have happened, and the battle should have happened on this side. There would have been significantly less development. And after that, it would have just been too difficult to catch up. You gave up the cutting stones. You can't give up the cutting stones that early. So with this inside attack, you had the cutting stones, you had the groups separate. But after they were captured, you've now given your opponent unconditional life. And we say unconditional life because your opponent is not going to knowingly play these moves. So this is unconditional life. So yeah, save the cutting stone, save the cutting stone, save the world, and you're going to do that on this side. Yeah, because we have the first eye, and then we have this cut in here. There's a lot of problems. A lot of problems with this cutting stone in here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups for white, and then hopefully if this gets life, it'll be 1, 2 living groups, and then 2 questionable groups for black. But yeah, if you're going to cut, you have to save your cutting stones, especially this late in the game. You have the influence. This stone here, even without F16, you still have the influence. One white stone isn't going to be a make it or break it. White can run towards the stone, which is fine, but as white's running towards the stone, then just maybe, these ones can fall. So if you're going to use your influence, you have to cut everywhere. And after you're done cutting everywhere, then, well, then you'll see. So this here is definitely in trouble. This is going to be in trouble because you still get the cutting move in here. If, we'll say, white responds on this side, black's going to respawn up here. So really, white won't be able to save everything. But yeah, save your cutting stones. Save, save, save. Alright, and we had one more queued up. What did we have queued up? This one! White wins by 0.050. Alright, who recommended this one? Ah, there we go. This one's probably going to be just outside of our... maybe this isn't going to be outside of our purview. Okay, so typical for shape, these extensions, that's not bad. You could extend 2, and this has some pretty good influence against that one, and it's 2 spots away. Approach the corner, just maybe. So fancy. Okay, so the only reason I'm going to take this one just briefly is if you watch that other lecture, is he is the one about shapes. So here's one of the shapes here. We have another one of the shapes he's going to talk about here. We have the extension like this. And if you look subtly, there's two stones and there's a single jump from that stone. So these are powerful shapes that are popping up. And actually, I think this is actually specifically one of the shapes as well, but it's okay without that stone there. That just adds a little bit of extra support. So I'm not going to review anything on this game specifically. This is played by Crazy88 Don and Gelato9 Don. So this is just outside of the purview of the stream, except for shapes. It doesn't matter how strong you get, the closer and deeper you look at a Don level game. If you just watch the next few games and look at the shapes they make, you're still going to see these kind of shapes. Likewise, we should all be familiar with that. No, that's a terrible shape. We should all be familiar with bamboo by now. We should also be familiar with the this kind of jump and this kind of jump. So these are going to pop up quite frequently in a lot of games. And then you see how well they work to the person's advantage who's playing. So this is still a good shape, fairly unbreakable. This turned into the 3+1. We have the potential for an I in here. This is not settled yet. But what happens with the shapes is completely different. Yeah, the power square. Just like in Tetris. That's actually a good move. Not right here. Does anybody know why this is still a good shape? Well, that's true. It can't be cut. All right, we'll do it that way. So we'll take that away, and we'll give black the next move. So because it's an eye-killing shape. This is the best reason for it. So every once in a while, when you have enough throw-ins, you can create that boxy shape, and with that boxy shape, yes, you do reduce your opponent to the one eye, and then you get to kill the group. So it's not something you want to have on its own, unless it's some way that you can actually turn it to your advantage and use it to knock out an eye on your opponent. Okay, so we're not going to do the Dawn game today. This one, I believe we kind of got the gist of what happened here. This is a game all about cutting stones, and there were numerous cutting stones that had to be worried about. So, anybody have a game now? Who's next for review? Any DDK, any game. I don't care if you've won or you lost. Let's examine. Hey, there's one. Alrighty. 10Q. Alright, we're just at the borderline now of becoming SDK. That's good. So 15-point difference, two stones. So Faithishly versus the anti-Hyago. Huh, wonder whatever happened to the regular Hyago. So let's do the review side. Well, maybe. Is there something to be done about the middle? No. No, no, no. Okay. Everything was pretty settled by the end, so that's not too bad. Yeah, before it became big. Alright. So right here, this is before it became big. Let's see what happened. Alright, nice opening. Very good. What I like to see. talked about going onto the third line there, and that's probably going to make a difference later on in the game. Let's see if we could prove that. I'm not often wrong. I'm only wrong on Saturdays or any day that ends in Y. So now someone approaches on the fourth line to the third line, and you get all the power in the world here because now you're ahead one on the crosscut. So there's a lot of fun stuff that happens with this. Yes, just because this happened in the Dawn game previously doesn't mean that it's always good. Uh, let's see. Okay, we'll explain it this way. So your opponent has to make a few extra moves here to develop a wall. And if you go this way and your opponent just comes this way, you have to come out one more. And they get this fancy, incredibly extra thick, powerful shape. So here, let's look at it from the point of view of where's your opponent's points. So we will say that is the wrong one. We'll say this here belongs to black. And that this here is going to belong to white. And we want to do something in such a way that's going to turn white's territory into black's territory. When your opponent comes up like this, and you play a sequence more like this, excuse me, what you've done now is all you did was we had a previous division, and all you did was solidify it. So this was black, this was white, and all you said is, okay, that's fine, you can have that. I'm going to take this, and it's all settled. What you could do is something like this. So now, what your opponent had for territory, which is still not settled yet, still not settled. Now this little bit is white, and because they still may make an extra move, we don't know yet. And this all has now become black. So it's the direction of play. And direction of play in this situation, you are DDK, just borderline SDK, which is great. This makes a big difference. Don't worry about this this little bit in here. I know this looks fairly intimidating, but this is a string of white stones, and this is a solitary white stone. We have some advantages here. As we'll get the scribbles off the board. This is now a stable living group, and white has some problems in here. With a stable living group, you no longer have to worry about it. This is a very good thing to have early in the game. You don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry much about these two stones. This is the next biggest point on the board. But however this gets settled, you get to come back and influence this or this. When you settle this group in a fashion like this, you've now given your opponent life, you've given them territory, you've taken life and territory, but you have a slightly heavier shape. They have a little bit of a looser shape. So when you have the option, stretch out underneath and take away as much as you can, as much as they will let you. They may play something that looks like this. Not only do you get the peep, but then you get to come back and knock this stone out. It's however far they're going to let you have Sente. It's going to be up to them, but you let them decide it. Let them decide how much of their territory they're going to give to you. But no matter what happens, once it's done, you get very solid shape, very solid territory early in the game. Things that you don't want to have to worry about. In this situation, you're not completely alive. Say your opponent did this and we settled this way. If it was settled this way, this is an odd Tsuji that does come up from time to time. If it gets blocked on that side, your opponent connects there. If it gets blocked on this side, your opponent connects there. So this is one of those Miyai things that it doesn't matter what happens on one side, your opponent gets to take the other. So you don't want to have that in such a heavy symmetrical shape. So you want to have lighter play when possible. When not possible, make your life. So this is the first part that would help you develop later on. This is good. Attacking the solitary stone. I would say that the opponent would have responded wrong. Typically they would jump out first, giving you a chance to come out that way. They would come into the corner, and now we would have a big fight coming on. So this would be more traditional in the game. So playing this way, absolutely correct. Knock out that stone when possible. Keep chasing. You have a good option to keep chasing here. Due to the heaviness of the shape, they would have to play extra moves. If you force the life, then you have advantages here now. Now this is far more detrimental. But yeah, you should force the life first. And this stone is knocked out successfully. This is fine. Eventually white may want to play towards it, but it's not going to do anything for them. But this here now lets them choose. Like this floating stone and this shape in the corner is now a little bit worse. So this is one of those carry it through situations. And let's see where that came from. Okay, so yes. So it's you have the right idea. This is great, but in the wrong order. But you could still carry on with it. You could still come out this way. And if they ever wanted to try and settle the shape, they can settle the shape. So this is fine. And now you still get to come back and play against that stone. So this would still be very successful. This is still a very nice large settlement for you. Because this is out, there's still some shenanigans that can happen against this maybe. Not a bad shape. Those two stones aren't too secure. But yeah, we have a little bit of a difference now. You don't always have to settle a shape either. Some shapes are good to leave till later, but not when you have something as loose as this. So now what you've done is you've developed strength against a living group, and left this out in the open. So now your opponent gets the peep, and you have now what are you going to save? Are you going to save this group, or are you going to save this group? This one here just for the snapback situation, which is fine. But yeah, then they'd still have to come back for this. A lot of things unsettled here. No, that's not going to work. How about that? So yeah, but you don't have to come out on the other side either. This is not invadable. It shouldn't be invadable. So if you knocked out this stone, because this actually becomes very important later on, this would be Sente for you. You can also have some fun with that later, which is not an issue. So say you captured that stone for no reason, and your opponent jumps in here. This stone should not be able to live. So you don't have to protect something that didn't necessarily need protecting. Likewise, if your opponent comes in on top, all you have to do is play on the bottom. It is not big enough for you to have to worry about. So I think you would still be okay just ignoring this. So this here became a little bit of a thank you move. So your opponent played something that was not a threat to you, so you should have played this move elsewhere. And given, if you watch that shapes lecture, very good shape. Well, and that's tough. Actually, what were the time constraints on this? 25 minutes main time, 3 45-second periods. So this is actually still considered a nice slow game. Japanese rule set, not a problem. Analysis was enabled, but probably not necessary. So we have a couple of things to look out for. We do have some good shape now that we've discussed everything that could have happened there. So it's what you want to do. So if your opponent's running and they chose to run in this direction, go that way. You don't want to attack directly, so you attack from a distance. What's most common in the DDK side of things, and some SDK, well, by the time you get to 1Q, they're less worried about that. A 1Q knows this is alive, but an 8Q sometimes will do this, and then you have the advantage. You start surrounding something like this from a distance. They see things as you're playing towards these stones, because you are. But all the extra moves now they have to make to fix up the shape gives you a chance to surround this. And now this becomes a lot weaker. It still has some Aji, but it's significantly lessened. But when you play in here, when you play just a small move like this, that is a thank you move, and it does give your opponent an extra big move to make. And likewise, it did happen. When it comes to a peep like this, I would say just this is a good time to capture it. Your opponent can't make any good moves here, and I would find this is a better divide and conquer. Just because you have this bit of a threat in there. But I believe your response worked out, which is a little unexpected. But if the opponent had done this, then... yeah, it's still not bad shape. They still have a problem to fix up. This is fraught with kind of almost thank you moves. So a thank you move, I use the example of this one here. So if black didn't play this move, sorry, if white was able to play here, what does it do against this group? I'd say against this group, it really does nothing. So essentially, right. So because it does nothing, your opponent didn't have to respond to it. Likewise, if you play this move as a defense, this move did not do anything for black, and it didn't do anything against white. Yes. So essentially what it is, it's almost like a pass. So I would equate this move here is almost the same as playing a move like this. Almost. Not quite. This has a bit more benefit, but not by much. So that's the thing. So if your opponent does this, that's a thank you move. That would almost be the same as playing a move like this in your own territory. It's already alive, so why would you just solidify that eye? There's no point to it. So this one here is the thank you move. So this is white gets 2 Sentai moves in a row and 2 bigger moves. And this peep here was actually quite big. Because we're incredibly polite players? That would be a good reason. I would say just, thank you for making that move. Why not? It just benefits you. It's helping you out. So as black, black actually had some very good potential early on, And then when a move like this is played, black fell a little bit behind. So as far as white's concerned, thank you, you've done me a favor. You've done something that's better for me. Something I don't have to respond to, and it doesn't affect me much at all. So that's the thank you portion of it. So it's just a small move that doesn't do much. Likewise, let's see. So this is a fun situation. Would it have been worth giving it up this way? That's still a lot to give an opponent. A lot of unsettled shape. And these have to be responded to, and that ladder's not going to work. White could have kept pressing in here, and that would have been disastrous for black. No, black's not the thanker on this one. White would be the thanker on that one. So yeah, so this here, this is a little bit on the... Black is too far away on this. If you have... And I know it seems kind of small, and sometimes you can get away with this one as well. But if you go too far, when you're this close to a battle, you no longer have the luxury of taking as much space as you need to keep expanding. And the closest you can get would be something almost like this, but even then, the cut's still going to work. So here... Here, all white had to do was push. Push through. And this becomes a forcing move now that black has to take. But the ladder doesn't work in black's favor, which is unfortunate. So now there's going to be some... Yeah, there's going to be some pretty devastating results here. And then all black has to do is play in and hopefully, just hopefully... Yeah, we don't even have to worry about that. Yeah, we're going to take this first. Someone's going to have a bad day. Where do you let the opponent live? If you let it live on this side... Yeah, that's fine. Overdeveloped. That'll get a little bit heavy. That'll get a little bit heavy. And then still have to come in and knock that out. No, not necessarily. Well, this is definitely a situation where one wrong move and that's it. Everything's done for. So probably do the exchange. Sacrifice this for a better position on the board. So now this would be necessary. And white would get a superior position on the outside with it. Which would be a fair sacrifice for this. Eventually what will happen is as this gets played out, then just maybe you could force that to be taken as well. Yeah, so there's still a lot of Aji left in those stones. So what you'd want to do, I guess the entire point was, you come in closer, so now your opponent can't do this. It's just, it is not going to be possible whatsoever. The most they're going to get out of this is an ugly code that does nothing. They have to protect one or the other, and that would be it. Of course, you probably wouldn't play that either. So yeah, so don't play too far. Don't play too far when you actually have a battle going on that close. The only downside to this... Yeah, and far and low does come in handy. But the far and low, whenever you see people play that, they don't have overdeveloped stones in the vicinity. Or typically they shouldn't. So now, if white comes in, black can still separate, because now this is alive. So it's the difference between alive and invadable. So I would still favor something like this. Oh, if only everything was invincible. So the opponent jumps in pretty deep. That would have been beneficial as well. You could expand from there. Could you... I would say that's close to the living side of things, isn't it? Still have to give a little bit of chase, but possibilities. But that's a lot of extra to worry about that we don't have to worry about if we play just a bit safer and closer to home. Yeah, so forcing the take there to develop influence, very well done. Negating that said influence by actually threatening these stones even better. I would come out one more. Yeah, always check the 2-1 points. So here, this is actually a very interesting situation that when you bent over here for this group, which is not bad, but you're only capturing 3 stones, when you could have just kept pressing, just for the fact that the extra move against that stone there. Likewise, due to the Liberty shortage, a lot of things can't possibly happen here. So you can actually take this and... uh-oh, what did I do? Okay. Yeah, so you can actually take it just a bit farther, and then it would be fine. Then you can come out this way. Come out this way. Come up this way. Come up from down below. This comes in handy. Then you create a nice little cutting point over here, which has to be taken care of because of the way that's pointing. And then you threaten that, and voila. But there's another issue with this. Why is all of this problematic? Well, not even really problematic. I think it actually still works in this situation. So what I like about this portion actually worked. These stones did get cut off. There were some forcing moves against it to force it, which I don't like. But overall, this kind of forces you to run with living stones. Yeah, black can connect, which is good. White does have a few extra issues now, which is kind of what we were going for. A little bit of a cutting point here. When black presses through, it'll be influencing these a little bit more. This is a bit more of a stable connection. Where this is just kind of heavy. And now... Ooh, problems. Cut when you can cut. Cutting is always a good thing. This would have been a fantastic place for a cut. If white wants to run, that's fine. There's a lot of potential weakness here. White's going to have to come back and try and defend something because, hypothetically, if something like this happens, and then that, and then we have terrible things like this, and you don't want that to happen. So there's a lot of weakness that happens, but this is going to be one of those cut when you can cut. There's a cut later. So this here only captures 3 stones. I see one of the common themes here And I did cover this. This is a... Hmm. There. And then we had this. Yes, that was exciting. Ah, here we go. We spend a lot of time, a lot of stones, capturing 2 stones that were never really captured. So that's a lot of extra effort when sometimes it's best just to settle. Just let the peep happen in a very specific way like this. If white is that content on saving this stone, you can still do the divide and conquer thing, but in this situation it would be best. You can actually come in now, and this would be one of those places it's okay to come in pretty deep, because this is weak and black is strong here. Black is strong here for a couple of reasons. If moves are made against this, you have the advantage of making life. This is a living group, not a problem. And once all the forcing moves are done, black is set up. White still has to do this, but white's not completely secure here because we have peeps and a lot of bad shape happens. And look at all these potential, oops, cutting points. This B2 bomber shape is not too secure. So sometimes it is better when this happens to, when there's a peep, connect. That's it. No funny business. Don't try and overthink the situation. Just connect. Because even if white comes out this far and you want to do the divide and conquer thing, this is still not a stable stone. Anything that's played against you seems to make you lose a game. We got to find a way to fix that. So, likewise, we spent a lot of moves here just capturing 2 stones. Those 2 stones are worthless. Even that 1 stone was worthless. However, the shape you get from that 1 stone is good. Oh, wait, well, when you have to make it. Well, then we're going to have to review those situations to see why it went wrong. It's okay, we're going to get this all corrected one day. And now we're back over here. This stone here, aside from how many moves got made there, all you're threatening to do is capture 2 stones. Capturing 2 stones is not a priority when there's a lot going on the board. You can actually... Not saying that there's that many better moves. There's this cut, which is a good move. Cut when you can cut. Yeah, see if white saves them. If white wants to expend the extra move, after all that, that's fine. Because then you get a cut, and then you can have a peep, and then you can have one of these, and then one of those. And then, voila, now you have all the influence, and the game's changed hands again. And you still don't have to worry much about this. Because these 2 stones here are lacking liberties. They can't be used to cut this apart and kill it. Right. But that's the thing. So that move that you played over here, though, was this would go into that other... Back again, it's... where are we? So not quite a thank you move. This move still does have a little bit of benefit. It's going to prevent these stones from running this way. And then white does that, which is fine. I would ignore that. What would I ignore that with? I would do a peep. Then I would do a cut to see what happens, probably something like that. Start running with it, and after you're done running with it, then you can maybe... I don't know, something fancy like this. Is that going to work? Not quite. Too far? What if we came up this way and... No, that does work. That does work, because with this stone in here being captured, you can still run with it. And these two stones are successfully cut. A little bit of weakness in there, and there's a lot of reduction happening. You can still plow through here. If you've developed properly, you can still come back and try and save those. And you're probably still going to end up losing those 2 stones, but that's okay. Yeah, maybe you can save those 2 stones. But with a move like this, okay, so we save those stones. We save these 2 white stones now, which is not a problem. Sorry, we kill those 2 white stones. But with that, now white was able to fix up all these cutting points. There was a lot of bad shape in here that got fixed up just by 1 move. The closest that'll happen is now we get back to this B2 bomber shape. Let's see, we would start it with something like this, and then your opponent's going to play that, and we do this, and then have fun. And then we got to see who is the better everything here. Because we only have 1 eye. And then it becomes a nice capture race. Semi-eye, unless my Japanese is off, which happens. So we can have a fun capture race. But that's okay, we didn't see that. But now when you... Hey, everything is a race if you're brave enough. So now with something like this... Where does this go? Hey, that could have been a fun ladder to have. What else can we do with a ladder? Let's see what happens if we make it wrap around this way. Ooh, that would be exciting life. Oops. O10 was cut at some points. Yeah, right around this point. Alright, so that captures 6 points. That's fantastic. 6 points in your favor. But in trade for those 6 points, white got a lot over here. Look at the size of this fancy centerness. That's pretty big. Pretty big. You know, and as strange as it sounds, a lot of that could have changed if it wasn't for just this 1 stone here. It really is that much of a difference sometimes, because once you fall behind, you really can't catch up sometimes. And when it came to the influence territory, that little bit of a race in Jill's previous game, same thing. It just takes that 1 move, and then you're just playing that eternal catch-up game that you just can't quite do, and you're always that extra 5 points behind. But you spend that time on a small situation like this that not only ends in Gote for you, that was just 6 points. Yeah, that's... yeah, it's exciting things like that. That's one thing I like the AI for. It's I don't mind making a bad move, but it's different when it tells you exactly how bad that move was. And then it throws like a huge number on there, like -50, and it's like, holy jeez! It's like I just feel sometimes that when I make a move that's so bad that it's not that the AI knows that it's bad. That's right when OGS should say, you know what, we're just gonna take a rank away, and now I'm gonna go from 6Q to 7Q just like that. All right, so the shenanigans in the middle. Wow. You know, even before that, you would almost think, as a possibility, that if this happened, that this could have almost been something. Almost, but we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist. So that's not too bad. Yeah, you get a little bit of extra territory out of it. In Gote. That fixes up that little bit of an Aji issue. We still have a monkey jump in there. That didn't do anything. This is a good move. That had to happen, yes. Wow. You know what? If nothing else, you have an absolutely phenomenal end game here. This here is absolutely killer as far as points go. Other than that little bit of an inside move there, but overall, I think it would just be that. And everything else was settled quite beautifully. Like overall, that was an absolutely amazing end game. That actually brought you up a lot of points. Minus 47. Well, yeah, we all have dreams of those inside moves. I think the only time that inside move would have made sense is just that little bit over here if you could have forced your opponent into the B2 bomber shape. Yeah, that's right. And it's those kind of things that when left uncut at the wrong time, like here, it's the cutting move was there. Just take it. Just take it and see what happens. Even if the cut's on that side, it's fine. There's still a little bit of weakness here that has to be sealed up. White can't play this because black can play that, and then we have trouble. So white has to come out one more, and typically it's one more. You don't want to leave 3, you just leave 4. So there are possibilities here. There is a lot that can happen. But overall, this looks like it was a very exciting game. But yeah, with a few things that happened in here, I do like the way that this was eventually settled. Like this was definitely different. I did not anticipate the opponent doing that. With something like this, if the connection's going to be made anyways, it's tough because this is some pretty ugly shape through and through. So those stones which couldn't be saved, it's you have to save them somehow. This might be the next best. And now black's connected. Black's connected with a little bit of Gote here, but still black's connected, which is huge. Like this would have been absolutely phenomenal to be to have played out that way. Just a bit simpler. But yeah, these are just some hanging stones. These would be something great to go after. You can go after them from 2 directions. Sometimes it's even good from a point like this. Take your territory. You already have a commanding lead. Now that these are connected with eyes, you have a commanding lead that way as well. Attack from a distance. Always attack from a distance. So if you play a move like this, this is the side where white may want to expand from, because if white tries on this side, it's a little tight for life. Just a little bit. Yeah, maybe some influence can be had. So just play something like this. If the opponent extends, then you use that to your advantage with some fun peeping moves. And now you've blocked their ability to run this way. They want to come out over here, then you come up over here, threaten to play towards these stones. And as you play certain moves like that, by the time everything is said and done, these lose a lot of the Agi, and it's very difficult for your opponent to play towards them. This would be a very large loss. But even then, you wouldn't make your intentions known with 14. That's just an example. And then you would play out something like this. Or you can come back and play against this over here. This would actually be necessary to be settled. They still have to make an extra move. And that's all it is. And these here, it does give your opponent some territory, but likewise it helps you develop as well. They're going to have to spend a lot of moves to try and save these. They would have to play towards it. Even with this over here, it's not an easy game for life on this one now either. Like this is a little bit of an ugly shape for white to be in. And and here's the thing, when the running happens, if this becomes strong, this becomes weaker. If this becomes strong, this becomes weaker. So all you have to do is stay connected. And that's that's the tough part. But you have to start thinking a little less locally when you're doing that. And I get that's kind of what you wanted with this. So had this been significantly fewer stones, that probably would have been a good move. But now you're thinking you're thinking locally for what's necessary to be a global capture, and that's something that'll be able to be trained out of you in time. And I think what you would have to look at is this alive? Yes. Well, then I'm going to play a big move. Is this alive? Yes. Well, you play a big move. Something like that. Are these two stones alive? No. Well, let's attack them. You know, are these two stones alive? No. Well, let's keep the pressure on. So this is what you would want to happen throughout the game. Is just keep that pressure on. But overall, I wouldn't say there's a lot of mistakes. This isn't a mistake-ridden game. It's more of some of the moves were a little on the small side. Yes, we will consider this alive. We would consider this alive. This is connected because even with that there, the most you're going to get is just that one stone. Forcing moves for later on, nothing to be settled now. We'll consider this alive because if all goes as planned, the opponent would have responded correct to the Q18 move. But one of those things that you could have worried about also, if you weren't sure and you wanted to save just a little bit of time, instead of playing this move here, play this one. Just to take the eye away now, for the potential later on that this could actually work out to your benefit. Some forcing moves just cannot be ignored. And at least this gives you that security in the corner as well. It does seem a little small, and no, your opponent does not have to respond to it. They can still do this. But now this looks a lot worse for when that happens. So yeah, when there's a peep, connect. Nothing too elaborate. That's also when you have... When you have a shape like this and there's a peep, just connect. Do the simplest thing on the board and just connect. It doesn't matter if the peep is here or the peep is right in the middle of the board. Just connect, keep it simple, and carry on. But yeah, a couple of minor adjustments, and that minus 14 is going to turn into a plus 14 soon enough. Alright, I've been doing this for 3 hours and 10 minutes. I'm going to take one more request. Anybody out there with another DDQ request? And of course I say I'm going to take one more, but that doesn't mean I'm going to take one more. It's probably going to end up in 2 more or maybe even 3, but yeah, I'll take one more. Well, I did miss you last weekend, Jill, so I could always take one more from you. You definitely get yourself into an interesting pickle every now and then. That's always fun to review. Okay. Well, yeah, that keep fighting even though you've lost. That is, isn't that the motto of the Invincible Knight? And then, you know, no arms, no legs, but come here and I'll bite your kneecaps off? So you're saying that you lost this game and ended up winning? Alright, and we have review, yes. Game information. 11K versus 12K. Japanese rules. 19 by 19. 20 minutes, so then we didn't have a lot of time to think, but just enough time to think. Alright, I am going to review this. If everybody could just give me 2 minutes, I am going to run and get myself a glass of water. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Thanks for waiting, everybody. And let's see what we have here. Alright, this is a very good move. This is like how I like to see a game start. Alright, pretty good. Maybe not so much, but we're still balanced. Has anyone here actually read the second book of Go? Jill is white in this game. There's an interesting, let's see, we'll just say that this happened over here. An interesting shape, this one here. And in the second book of Go, this is actually quite common against a handicap setup, well, with this sequence anyways. So typically there's going to be a stone here. And I don't know how it came to be, but in the second book of Go, which was reviewed by a lot of professionals, this was actually one of the preferred shapes against this sequence here. Against this stone here had it been a handicap game. So it actually does pop up on occasion that this connection here is quite strong, because there's a lot of interesting things you can do against a stone that's here with this setup in particular. Alright, so we jump in the corner, we choose that Joseki. Alright, now, when it comes to Joseki choice, Jill, you do absolutely fantastic, so I would like to know, why did you choose this one? Okay, I like that. And then you also had it, a nice extension there, which is good. See, I frequently take influence, but then that does work just a little bit against because now black has Sente and can do whatever. But divide and conquer. So you get a move against this stone, but now black gets the option to save this stone, and then you'd have to come up and fix this. So this threat remains active. That cutting point is potentially detrimental through and through. If there's no other move on the board, then there's no other move on the board but this one right now. Oh, you are very brave. That's good. That's actually an incredibly good tactic, is if you know something can live, purposely making a shape so your opponent attacks it in such a way that you could double back on them and knock them out of the game. But then if we could all do that, we would all be pros now, wouldn't we? This is a very interesting sequence. So this just goes back, and I gotta say that black played it correctly here. What black did correct was there was two stones there, and here and in the corner, did not try and save them both. And what you see, and this is how you know that you're getting better. You don't try and save everything on the board all the time. So you don't go with something like this, make that move, and then come back and try and save this, and then suddenly now your corner's in trouble and you don't know what to do because you're under attack from every direction. Although that may have worked here, who knows? You still got to make that extra move there, and then white's going to do this, and then come back here. And now you're in a lot more trouble, and suddenly everything dies. Sometimes it is better just to settle. And there is still some Aji in this, which of course is being exploited now, which is good. But there's a time and a place for sacrifice, and sometimes it does have to be made. Wow. So you play the ladder breaker. Black plays the ladder breaker. Could this have been played a little bit differently? And this is some very strong shape. There is some heavy shape for white, but there's still a lot of a light shape here, which is good as well. And light shape against this solitary stone is fine. What I find interesting is why not peep first, then come back, and at least you have a little bit more. Essentially what you would be doing is you're not coming in, and I know this isn't for Jill's side, but likewise for everybody. This is as an 11Q. If we remember anything from before, if there is a peep, peeps are usually followed up with a connect, but you can. Well, yeah, you would do that anyways, but this also does take away a lot of potential influence later on. So if you're not going to peep, then likewise, there's a cut here, there's a cut here. Take the cuts. The cuts are going to have to happen. And the cuts will be very detrimental because the divide and conquer, it looks like it's going to be fairly successful either way. There's some bad-ish shape here, just because the potential of the false eye. Black comes down, and this is going to happen, and the white's going to do that, and we're going to do this. We have a false eye, potential of a false eye because of this, and you just don't want to be in that situation. And likewise, because it's still on the board, this cut here. Before anything else happens, take your cut, see what develops. Because something just as simple as this is going to be the difference now. Where are we? We'll just say white wants to take the extension. Now black can come in and start doing that same reduction, but you have a lot more support. It's about having that more support, and you want that support. If you don't develop, then you can't attack. So black comes in, no support, white comes in on top. This is fine. This is exactly what you want to do. You keep the pressure on. I would play something more like this or this. I like this one here. This has two purposes. Even if black comes in, you have a connection for white down here and white up there. It's just how many ways can you possibly escape from the same situation? And the more that black attacks, the extra heavy he's going to be. Just hypothetically, wants to save these cutting stones, then now if something got cut here, you still connect on the bottom. Black would have no choice but to jump out here, but then you already have the good situation there. And now you could just ignore and expand anyways. So I don't mind a Hane. A Hane is good in many situations. It has such amazing power, especially when you get into the double Hane. If your opponent tried to do something like this, then this does work for you as well. But every once in a while, you can't, or sorry, you can. You absolutely can. You shouldn't always be aggressive. It's not about seeing a second line move, it's about seeing the shape. 2 spaces from 2 stones. That's a good one to have. This is your eye shape, and not just that, you have the connection underneath here in the event of an issue. Like it's having a move that does a lot of things. It connects to this. It gives the future connection here. It's still strong against this setup here, but it's strong in a different direction. So I would say see it from just the basics of good shape, as opposed to what's the absolute best, strongest, how can I kill my opponent? Because yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that can happen. It's the Hane does have a lot of interesting moves against it. Not that it can happen in this tight space yet, but this is still a good connection here. This is still strong because your opponent can't come in due to the ladder right into the side. But you have to worry about this still. You have to worry about your cut. You have to worry about a lot of things. And when you play just one down here, that takes away an extra worry. So you want to do as much as you can every move. You want your moves to have as much purpose as possible with the least amount of moves on the board. And I think this is one of those moves that does just that. Okay, so we come underneath anyways, but now we have that cutting point that was created due to the Hane, which gets the ladder situation, which caused us to have a ladder breaker, which could have been eliminated just by playing this first and ignoring the entire Hane situation. Ladder breaker's played. Would it be better to come in from here? Because you're going to have to worry about quite a bit anyways. And then black has some yucky shape as it is. Because you can fix that. A quick capture of the cutting stone, and then you also have some threats against this corner. Threats to help fix some bad shape. Some forcing moves against your opponent to fix some bad shape. If this doesn't get knocked out, you should knock those out. It's just going to save a lot. Keep things connected. Because that won't be possible now. That does fix the cut, so we're good there. And that's the problem with these tight spaces. These tight spaces give so many possibilities, and you never know where your opponent's going. In a situation like this, you should know where your opponent's going, because there's really only one way out. But now we get to play towards the stone, which is a little devastating to white's development. Knock that out, knock that out. That's actually not too bad, coming up that way. Because instead of coming in over here, this would be... Because now you get a bit more center territory with this. Okay, maybe you get a lot more center territory with this, or a lot more influence. And all of this still isn't settled. You could still come in with this situation over here. Just hypothetically, black's going to do that, so white's going to come in. What if we do that first? And then we do that. And then your opponent's going to want to secure some life. And then you still have a connection to this stone on both sides. So just make sure you're always set up to have 2 points of exit. Always have possibilities where you can not always save. I know this goes against what I say about don't try and save every stone, but this is a very influential stone here. This does a lot of things. That one is still good to sacrifice. But if you somehow manage to save this stone, if you played on that side, now black can't come through here, has no choice but to capture. That's true. So threatening to save this stone is one thing, but actually saving this stone can be very beneficial because there's a lot of extra territory that this actually destroys. It's a lot of large knight moves. So my favorite chess saying, I did mention this in the previous stream, is you got to give some board to get some board. So you give a little bit to get a little bit, but then you leave it open. And it would be moves like this that really... Again, there's cutting moves on the board that aren't being exploited early enough. You gave black some cutting moves, exploited them, ladders happened, ladder breakers happened, which was good. But then your opponent doesn't capitalize on these ideas. And there's a lot of potential there that was wasted. And then likewise, knowing that you gave yourself bad shape, you got to come back and fix that as soon as possible. Before your opponent does that. So now that this is connected, there's going to be a reduction here, but this is small compared to everything else that's on the board. So this is no longer a threat. Not yet. It'll become bigger later on, but since we're not close to endgame, that actually can be ignored. There could have been many better things that could have been played. And not just knocking that out, but... So if you came back and connected, what's black gonna do? Jump in once more. But you still could have had a good couple of forcing moves in there. Just try and keep the scales tipped to your favor anyways. But likewise, if this stone didn't collapse and this was able to be kept separate, there would still be a lot of extra forcing moves in there as well. We'll just say... Now we're going to take that out briefly. We're going to put a white stone here and here. We're just going to say that this was cut. So if we say that this sequence was a little bit different earlier on, and that we were able to successfully keep these two groups separated, all of these moves have a lot more meaning. And it would no longer be possible for the opponent to play with a group like this. They would have to keep fighting for this group. So through here, we will add as an added benefits. So black plays there. White comes down this way. Black's going to come across. And now we knock out this way. So the divide and conquer mentality when you're attacking should be paramount with every move that you make. So this is divided, this is divided, this is divided. This is going to have some issues. This you can still do a 3-3 against. This is a stable living group, and this is something that can be approached but should be stable and living. So these two are your next two targets. So when you cut, you have to keep things cut and you have to keep things threatened. And that's going to take away a lot. So I believe you said this was one of those... It's a good thing you kept on fighting because your fighting led you to the win. But why would you expend all that effort later on in the game when you could have had the win that much sooner? Or, yeah, maybe you could have had it that much sooner because that gives you a lot more to attack. So you're able to cut through there, which is good. You got that forcing move. That's fantastic. So yeah, so you save the stone, not a problem. That's my favorite thing to do. If I have nothing else to do on the board, I try and save whatever stone I left behind. And I have been successful once or twice. But likewise, this isn't a threat because this was all connected. See, and had it been cut here, then this actually becomes a proper threat as well. That's how much different that portion in here could have been just from that one connection. But I do like your instincts. Like, you keep the pressure on through a majority of the game. You're still very aggressive. You're incredibly insightful for a lot of these. But through that insightfulness, you still give up a lot that you shouldn't have. Even though you can give it up in Sente, which is fine. But you make it a lot harder than it really needs to be. You got the peeps going, that's good. And you use the peeps to surround, which is great. This should have been played out more for black. And the last thing you have for great endgame moves... not so much that. Could have sacrificed that. So now there's a few things that are getting big. And that's the first one, the monkey jump. That's perfect, very well timed. And now you should ignore that, or not. Okay, well, yeah, don't fight the Ko. Okay, perfect, he did the second monkey jump. So it's these reductions that keep you ahead. So you actually had the superior end game. Your opponent had played too high, you played lower. Because you had those lower movements in there, these monkey jumps were the probably that 15-point difference for you to win. This one here, that one there, that's what it was. So you sacrificed a bit earlier on to make them. Yeah. And you do have a superior end game. Your tactics, you actually keep your opponent on the run for a majority of the game. They spend a lot of time responding to all your moves. You keep Sente throughout, which is fantastic. Your shape is typically stronger now. You used to have a lot more cutting points within your shape throughout the game. I don't think that was necessary. But now you actually have there. Now you have a lot more stability within your shapes. You're not cut as easy. You're not divided. You're staying connected. You're keeping your groups. You have 1, 2, 3 groups now, where before you used to have 5, 6, 7. Well, yeah, you had enough of a lead where it wasn't a problem, even if that happened. So a very good game. I'm happy to see the distinct change in play from even 2 months ago to where you are now. You are a very different opponent. That's for sure. Oh, which is fine. You can give up those three. You gave up those three in Sente. To give them up in Sente, they died for a good cause. So I wouldn't concern myself with those. The only other thing is this fun development that we talked about sooner, which actually would have been incredibly good to have here as well. This fun little invasion dealy that we spoke of in a previous game. Yeah, we're not saying that it always works. But when you have the right surrounding stones like this one, it's a little bit better than the approach that happened before. And you know what? It may work for you. There are some fun variations to this. And since you're at the right level to confuse and confound your opponent, start playing this from the 4-4 or even the 3-4. It actually works on both lines as well. So if you were to come in like this, oops, we're probably going to have that. This still has benefit. So give that a shot. Play it up a little bit, see what you can do with this, and see if that makes any difference in your games. Because anything you can do where you don't have to play as hard, you are doing great. And let's see if this makes that little bit extra of a difference. And yeah, you cut well, and it was the same thing. This is that same theme in both of your games. Could have been that much better if you had actually successfully captured the cutting stones and kept the group separate. You're attacking much, much better, but you just have to pull back for those 1 or 2 moves and then get back into it. Pull back for 2, save your cutting stones, then be aggressive again, start pushing. Pull back if you can cut, then get back to being aggressive. This is not desperation. This is a well-placed Tsuji. Well, this would actually be the well-placed time. So at around this part of the game, if as soon as you think about you want to play there, play here instead. See what happens. The only time it doesn't really work is if black already had a stone somewhere around here or here. It only works with the 2-stone Shamari, and you become the 3rd stone. So F17 or G17, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be beneficial. Hmm. All right, now that we're all caught up on that. Yeah, the conditions are very interesting. I gotta say, the condition was if you thought that C14 is good, well, play C16 anyways, and see what's going to happen. Hmm. So the question is, do we do one more? This is now my record for longest stream, and most viewers, and most kibitzers. I broke all my records today. This is great. Yeah, tell your friends about us. The more DDQs, the better. Let's see. Who do we have also here? Yeah, these are all played on OGS. I do have some other accounts, but for the most part, the only place I've been playing lately is OGS. I don't mind like Dragon Go server, but then I have to download the SGF and play it out in the KGS stream, KGS app. Yeah, like if you had a KGS game, I have no problem with setting it up otherwise. Didn't OGS used to have a way of uploading a file? I thought once upon a time in the good old days they supported that. Huh, guess not. That's okay. Does that work? SGF library. How about that? I can upload things. Well, that is absolutely fantastically educational. Look at all the stuff we're learning today. Why not to defend corners? Ooh. This is one of those correspondence games. Analysis was on. Japanese style. 19 by 19. 17Q versus 12Q. So I don't know if how many people actually remember any of the good old Go sayings, but there was one many moons ago that if white has all four corners, black should resign. If black has all four corners, black should resign. And in some interesting situations, that does turn out to be true. So this is a 5-stone difference. So Jill should have been white, but it was assigned by the tournament or something most likely. Yep, there's a tournament. Where are we? Review. So the first thing, white jumped out too far from this enclosure. You beat him so bad he lost 2 stones? So in a situation like this, it is... no. It was I'm sure it was a collection of everything. So in a rough history of Go, it was said that it was used as a game to help plan wars and also develop warlike tendencies. Back, many 2,000-3,000 years ago, when things like that were far more common, and you can see a lot of parallels to that. Like if you were going to fight someone, and you were stuck in a position of this or this, well, now you have 3 on 2. Even though you have some support nearby, this support isn't close enough. So the 3 on 2, chances are the 3 are going to win. So if you play on the outside, this isn't 4 on 2. This is actually still... Oh, sorry, this isn't 4 on 4. This is 4 on 2. Yeah, they won't. So when you're looking at a game that way, then it starts to make a bit more sense on what you want to save, where you want your offenses and defenses to be. Likewise with something like this. This is 2 on 1, similar to how this is 2 on 1, but just in 2 different directions. But if you look at it a different way, this is 2 on 1 or 2 on 1. It's not necessarily 2 on 2 because of the division that happens. And this would be the weaker stone because this one's facing the edge. So when you jump out too far like this... Uh-oh. Did I crash here? Is it your stream or my stream? Well, I think this is definitely me. Well, let's see what we can do with this.